At Kroger, we believe fresh means holding our produce to a higher standard. That's why we do up to a 27-point inspection on our produce. Like for citrus, we check for things like scarring and sunburn. Yep, oranges can sunburn, and we'll make sure you never see it. In fact, we only allow the best oranges, lemons, and grapefruits to reach our shelves. Because when it comes to fresh for everyone, we believe the juice is worth the squeeze. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Yo, this is Rich Latta here. We are across the street from MSG.
NY, baby. New York City, Madison Square Garden. Hey, y'all boy, come on.
Come on. Man, Jeremy Donovan here from Keepin It Strong Style and Social Suplex. We're here with one half of the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Champions.
Hey, one half of Gorillas of Destiny, but one whole of Tama motherfucking Tonga. Realest of the realest. Hey, ain't nobody realer than Gorilla.
Yo, this is Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Josh. Come and hit a job out in Barrio the Frogs. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keeping It Strong Style, the Ace of Podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Jeremy Donovan here with the young boy Josh Smith. On today's show, I'll review nights 10 through 13 of the 2022 New Japan Cup and cover all the latest news in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. You can support our show by subscribing and following the Social Suplex Podcast Network or Keeping It Strong Style on the podcast app of your choice and leaving a rating and review. You can also get all the podcasts over at socialsuplex.com. Check out our Pro Wrestling Tees store, ProWrestlingTees.com/socialsuplex. That's where you can get your official Keeping It Strong Style t-shirt. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and clicking on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. This week's episode is brought to you by the NJPW EXT, the only browser extension for NJPWWorld.com with features like dark mode, improved translations and layouts, custom and shared playlists, synchronized viewing parties, and much, much more. It takes NJPW World to the next level. You can visit njpwext.us today for details. Young boy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Glad to be back in the show once again. Kind of tired.
Long day?
Well, usually on a Sunday, that'll be like my time to like study, relax, reset, recalibrate for like the work week coming up, Yeah. And I'm pretty busy at work, just that and a lot of other different things I got going on. Plus, we got to watch all this New Japan Cup stuff. So there's just a lot. And as the listeners probably already know, we were at the Strong tapings here in St. Pete on Sunday, and prior to that we had our fan meetup, and prior to that I had a family engagement, so it was just like boom boom boom, go 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 all day long, and I kind of just never caught back up like on sleep.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Yeah, Sunday was a long day, man. With the meetup and the show, and then everybody's doing their thing beforehand, so yeah, Sunday was a long day.
Yeah, man. We'll talk about the meetup, and we'll talk about the show, but 13 matches, 4 hours. It was a good show, but that was long. Plus, it's far from where I live, and unlike you, I had to go to work the next day.
Yeah, I try to be ahead when it comes to these wrestling events and playing stuff off. So yeah, I had ahead of time. I already took the day off, but It wasn't really a very, restful day where I could kick my feet up. It was a day of running around for wedding planning and talking to different vendors and cake tastings and all kind of stuff like that. So I was running around all yesterday.
So you did cake tasting yesterday.
Yep, did some cake tasting, did some stuff for Men's Warehouse, got the groomsmen suit rental all set up. And
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I don't care about the suits, but you went and did cake tasting yesterday without your best man.
Well, I mean, I was sure my brother was working.
No. I'm the best man. Okay, look at me. Look at me in the face. Look in my eyes. I'm the best man now. Okay, we can tell the other Josh to take a hike, hit the bricks.
Oh man, it's like the Miro Kip Sabian storyline right now.
I'm the best man. Yeah, man. I would have definitely like everything else you guys are doing for the wedding. I'm sure that stuff is fun for probably Jen, maybe you. I don't know, but I have no interest in it. But the cake tasting, that's something I definitely. If you'd give me the heads up, I would have taken the time off. I could have definitely gone and done that with you guys and given you my insight. I don't know if you know this. Like I am a connoisseur when it comes to cake. I could have given you world class input, and you guys probably picked bad cake. Now you're gonna have a bad wedding. I don't know.
Yeah, missed opportunity. We could have had a 5-star cake. Now we're gonna maybe have a 3.5-star cake if we're lucky.
Maybe if you're lucky.
If the bakers put their working boots on, maybe.
It has at least your cake's gonna have at least 6 tiers, right?
It'll be a surprise. You'll see.
Every tier is a star. So if you tell me how many tiers you got, and that's how many stars this cake's gonna get, I can tell you right now.
Well, you'll see. I don't want to spoil anything. When you show up that day, you'll see.
No, I'm just playing. I'm sure you guys did a good job. I'm just jealous. That's all.
Good stuff there. But yeah, Sunday, Strong Style evolves. Let's talk about it. So we had the fan meetup at the Overflow Brewery in St. Pete.
Yeah. Thank you all to everybody that came out for the event. A lot of familiar faces and names. Some unfamiliar, some visitors, but we're just glad to have people out and hang out and grab a few drinks in a cool location. I wish the 2 or 3 times I had called the brewery ahead of time when I asked, you guys got anything going on this day? Nope. We're putting you on the calendar. I wish they would have told me that they're having a live painting and music event that was going to take up 2/3 of the entire brewery. That would have been some valid information. But other than that, the staff was nice. The drinks were good. The atmosphere was awesome. Good company. They let us hook up Chromecast and put some New Japan on the televisions there. So, all in all, a good time.
Yeah, really cool time. Like I said, good seeing some familiar faces and hanging out. The drinks were really good there, and it's pretty cool. We got put Strong up there. We had Inoki versus Vader up there. Then it somehow got switched to Dragon Gate at one point with young Lion Okada out there wrestling Liger.
I think they actually were playing Toryumon, which I wasn't really a fan. I don't. You come to a Keepin It Strong Style party and you put on some Toryumon. Like, I'll give them the pass because they had CTU Liger and young Lion Okada up there, but I don't fuck with that Toryumon. It's too many flips. They wrestle too fast. Not enough selling.
They don't slow it down. Don't give you time to register. There's no psychology.
I didn't see a single limb get worked. There's no stories.
Oh man. So yeah, that was cool. And then we headed over to the Coliseum for the Strong Style Evolve Strong TV tape. Like you mentioned, 13 matches, 4-hour show. We're not going to go into results and give any spoilers, so don't worry about that. So it's going to be a spoiler-free talk right here. But Josh, overall, what were your thoughts of the Strong tapings? Anything stand out? Any matches? Any wrestlers? Overall thoughts?
Yeah. So I mean, a few things. A few weeks out before the event, we were looking at the ticket maps for the event, and it looked like they only had it looked like they were set up for roughly a little less than 1,500 tickets total, at least from the seating chart. Something closer to like 13 change. And it looked like they still had like 1,000 seats available. So they were like only pushing 300 or 400, paid attendees, which I was like, dang, this is gonna be like the worst attended strong taping since like that Texas show. The second one they did.
Yeah.
Uh, but luckily, I looked at the map just the day of, and they had sold a very, very good portion, a lot more than they had previously. And I've got to, suspect that some of the names that they had, added to it, some of the AEW names and some of the Impact guys, and some of the match announcements kind of changed, shifted the mood because a lot of people came out. I don't think it was quite as many individuals as the show previously, like 2 years ago, because they did do that show in the same venue. But I mean, I'm just going to give a conservative estimate. I think based on just what I saw on the map and what I was looking at, there's probably like, I don't know, 700 people probably, roughly.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was it was not a like sellout by any means. It wasn't standing room only. There was a lot of tickets available. We had friends that walked up day of, but still, a good crowd, a lively crowd, a lot of first time guests because they had like these pins that they were giving out to people like, come see us if you're a first time New Japan attendee. And they ran out of those pins within like a few minutes, and they didn't expect to have that many first time goers to the show, especially since this is a market they've been to before. So this crowd seemed like a very different crowd from the New Japan show previously. Like that seemed more like your diehard like New Japan fans. This seemed more kind of like your general independent wrestling, like AEW watcher, like just local attendees. There wasn't as many like traveling type of fans and that sort of thing. But
yeah, definitely agree with that. I mean, just based off of the reactions and just how the crowds are watching the show, you can tell that these weren't people who watch New Japan. These are people who watch Strong, because like the guys who got the biggest reactions were the AEW guys, and it was hard for everybody else to get any kind of reaction.
For the most part, yeah. Unless they were like already previously known on the independents or something of that nature, or someone that was making, noise out there. But there were some surprises. There was cool angles, great matches. Again, we're not going to do any spoilers, but I think the person that was most over, which isn't really a surprise considering all the work they did in NXT and in the local area, and just kind of the presence they have, with the culture, has got to be. I was going to call him Isaiah Swerve Scott, Swerve Strickland. That whole entire whose house, Swerve's house chant has always been infectious, and in this environment, I mean, it was huge. And so I mean, that was I wouldn't call it surprising, but the level of over he was. I mean, he was, in my honest opinion, way more over on this night and there wasn't a close second. I mean, way more than Jay White, way more than like Eddie Kingston might be the close second, but like he was more over than Kingston. He's more over than everybody. It's kind of wild, and I'm sure that'll probably come through in the tapings.
Yeah, it was the biggest pop of the night. Like you mentioned, the Who's House, Swerve's House chants are ringing through that building. The temperature changed when he came out. It was a huge reaction. The crowd was so into that match. He was facing off against Blake Christian, and that was, to me, that was my favorite match of the night. Great reactions, just great match, and the energy really picked up with Swerve out there, and that new theme song, I Swerve When I Drive, the big pressure, that new theme is awesome. We were cranking that on his way down. We had pretty cool seats. We were like right there next to the guardrail, to the ramp where they are walking out. So depending on the camera shots, you'll probably see us on TV, kind of where we're sitting at.
Yeah, I saw a clip from when he came out to that entrance, and like there's people cranking. And I was like, man, they move pretty good. And I was like, wait a second, that's me. That's your boy. But no, it was pretty funny. Our boy Rock, he threw us the fists, which was cool. And the only thing is, the last hour of the show probably had some of the best, like, or at least probably the best collection of matches. But I got so tired toward, like, literally after the Swerve match. I was like burned out, and there were some really great matches after that. So, 4 hours for a TV taping, for me in that kind of environment, that might be a bit long. Just being honest, but overall, really great event. I wish that, or I hope that this exposure kind of brings some more awareness to some of the like LA Dojo and strong staples. But honestly, I don't know that, given the recent booking on some of these shows, like for instance, like let's take a guy like Carl Fredericks, for example. He put over Christopher Daniels. He went life and death with Ethan HD. And then he comes out, and that's, the last two tapings, he comes out for this show, and there's very little reaction. And it's like, well, Strong, people are already not watching Strong. And then, the booking on the show for those that do see him is a little lackluster. Plus, it's not like he's like out there making inroads on the independent scene. He's not like having like tearing it up in like Defy or, Beyond, or doing AEW or anything like that. So, it was kind of a disheartening to see like people not behind someone like him or some of the other like that's just a for example, but I think he's probably the most glaring obvious example, just because he's so excellent and there's so much potential there, but the company doesn't seem to be like putting their best foot forward with him right now. You know what I mean? And that was a little disheartening, and I'm hoping when people go to shows like this, it will change their opinions, but I'm not confident it will. I feel like to a certain extent, the Strong like at least this Strong show that we went to like seemed to almost like benefit a lot of the outsiders more so than anybody else.
Yeah, even with guys like Clark Connors in the Strong title match with Philly Tom Lawler, I mean, that was a Strong title match that has been coming for a while now. They've started the build on TV, and there's going to be obviously more build to come that will eventually lead to this match when it airs on Strong. But, Clark Connors, LA Dojo guy, been there from day one. Philly Tom's been there on Strong from day one. And both of these guys didn't really get a huge reaction. And this was, a pretty heated feud, a big title match. And there was not a lot of crowd heat for this.
Yeah, I mean, there have been other audiences that maybe are more savvy or more familiar with, Tom Lawler, probably from like his MLW run or like his work in the like Northwest Indies, that sort of thing. But or even out in like like California and that sort of thing. But here in Florida, they didn't seem to be as familiar with either of them. They did play the video package in house prior to the match, which I think did help to a certain extent. But there's just there were some things that you could definitely nitpick the show to death. There were some things that I think that they are missing the ball on. One other thing I noticed from the live experience, the merch, they gotta work on that merch, because the last time we went to the New Beginning USA tour, obviously they had the domestic talent with the domestic merchandise, and I mean, those merch lines were all over the whole entire building. There were lines out the building to be for merch. You walked in, and I mean, there was a shit ton of merch, but it was all domestic. It was all the Tokon US Global stuff, and most of it's not stuff I would wear, honestly. And I mean, I know that I'm not like the biggest merch wearer to begin with, but I didn't see a bunch of like Team Filthy shirts or a bunch of other like Strong branded merchandise being sported around the building. Most of it was either going to be like other wrestling shirts or like AEW stuff or New Japan domestic stuff. So that's something where I think they're missing the ball. They either need to get like better designs, or they need to maybe perhaps even sell the domestic merchandise from Japan, which is a big hot ticket item. We've been to so many shows and seen how that stuff really, really moves off the shelf. And when you come to a US show and you call yourself New Japan, but you don't have a Tanahashi shirt, you don't have Bullet Club stuff, like, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned with the merch line, like I was able to walk up real quick. I grabbed the Strong Style Evolve shirt. I remember, like, 2020, man, you got that merch line. It took forever to get merch. So yeah, definitely could have had some better selections there. Yeah, having some of the domestic stuff would have been great. But yeah, it was fine for what it was. It was pretty cool. Speaking of, first time watchers, my fiance Jen was there with us. This was her first New Japan show that she's been to. She's been to AEW, been to FIP, but this was her first New Japan experience, and she was the one that was like sitting like right by the rail, and she had a pretty good time, and she was popping the boys. She had her one-liners and comments coming out, and John Schuyler, as he was making his entrance, he was jacking his jaw at my lady. I had to stand up. John Juris almost came out of retirement, jumped the guardrail. Almost had to let this man know that I could still run it. I could still throw suplexes. But all serious, it was a lot of fun though. Just kind of jaw jacking with the heels on the way down the ramp there, and so yeah, cool experience, and yeah, she had a good time.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, my girlfriend was with me as well, and this was her. She's been in plenty of shows, but her first New Japan show as well. Although, like, I almost feel like we need to put an asterisk on it. Like, this is New Japan of America. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very, very different experience from even say like the LA Coliseum show that we went to, or was that at the Coliseum?
That was at the Torch.
Oh yeah, at the Torch in LA. Like that sort of show, even though it featured a lot of the same guys, that's sort of a different experience because you still have domestic stars, you still have like, God and Ishii and guys like that. This show was kind of lacking in that sort of respect. So I mean, there were a lot of cool things though to the presentation. I mean, the actual production value was very high, which is good. My feeling, the lighting was probably, I hope, better than it's kind of come across for some of the other like strong tapings that we've seen. Although one thing we kind of failed to mention is that the production has jumped up a little bit recently on some of these tapings as opposed to like some of the early ones,
Yeah, they definitely make strides to get better with the cameras, the lighting, the production. So overall, Strong keeps getting better. I think every taping they learn something and adjust. And, and it's kind of hard because they're going to different venues and different cities every tour. So it's not like the same building all the time, but they are trying to learn and adjust. And they're not always using the same crews and same people and same rings and all that stuff. So it's always different every city. But I do feel like they're doing a great job to kind of learn and adjust and make better calls based off of what they do in the previous tapings.
I will say this though. So, my girlfriend, she dabbles in photography. She has a pretty deep knowledge of cameras and that sort of thing. She whispered over me. She's like, the cameras they're using are shitty. And I was like, are they? They look like they're probably good. And she's like, no, those are not good cameras. So like, that's one thing that's got me like a little nervous. I couldn't tell you much more beyond that other than just like what the kind of reference she made. But without giving spoilers, the matches were all very good. There were so many matches though that they almost start to blend in for me at this point where I couldn't even hardly like differentiate what was the best or worst match of the night or anything like that or give grades even if I wanted to. Plus I usually like to like let the live experience be just that and really rely more on like the video presentation, like what made tape for any sort of like real evaluation because the experience you have live is always going to be very different from what is, what's put to tape. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how these shows come across, once they start to air and everything like that. But I think people will be happy. There was a lot of really great matchups, a lot of good matches, a lot of fast-paced action. The one thing I liked about the show is it was just like match, boom, 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 boom. There wasn't like a lot of like, as soon as match was over and the guys cleared the curtain, the music for the next, and the announcements for the next guys were like just happening. So it kind of, even though it was a lot of matches in a long paced show, they still like try to keep it as fresh and fast paced as possible.
Yeah, I thought the pacing was pretty good. Yeah, it was match. Some matches there were post match promos and some angles, but for the most part, like you mentioned, yeah, it moved along pretty quickly. As far as like best matches, like for me, like the Swerve versus Blake Christian match was probably my match of the night, and I thought Jay Lethal and Narita was a really good match. Kingston and Rosser versus Garcia and Yehai. There was so much heat with Kingston and Garcia. They were continuing their story from AEW and the feud that's happening there with the Jericho Appreciation Society and Kingston and Proud and Powerful.
Who did Buddy Matthews wrestle?
He wrestled Yuya Uemura.
The Uemura Matthews match is very good. The TJP Dorada match is very good. I mean, just there's a lot of good matches. There's a really good show.
Yeah.
If you've never been to a Strong taping and they come to the general vicinity of an area to where you can travel to for the price of what you're paying, you're getting an incredible value. I would highly recommend going if you've never been.
Yeah, I would say the only match that kind of felt out of place for me was Big Damo versus John Skyler.
Yeah, I don't even know if that'll make tape or not. That sort of felt like a tryout match, you know?
Yeah, it felt like that could have been like one of the YouTube extra exclusive kind of thing.
Yeah, but I didn't even realize Big Damo was like an NXT. I didn't know who he was, so I didn't realize he was like one of those NXT, what were they, Insanity?
Insanity, yeah. Former Killian Dane.
He didn't even look like Killian. He doesn't even look like Killian Dane anymore.
Yeah, the hair's cut and still a big hairy dude, but yeah, if you used to the hair and the Insanity look, you might not have recognized him.
Nice. Well, that covers everything on my end. Do you have any final thoughts?
Overall, really fun show. Like you mentioned, if Strong is in your city, you should definitely go and check it out. Looking forward to seeing what everything looks like on TV.
Nice.
So speaking of Strong, we'll keep talking about Strong and transition here into this week's Strong that aired night 3 of the Rivals Tour. So the show opened up. We had a 6-man tag. Freddie Ahai, Keita Murray, and the DKC. They defeated the Stray Dog Army of Bear Brown, Bateman, and Mysterioso. Thought this was a nice, fun opener here. Interesting that Stray Dog Army ate the loss here against this kind of random pairing.
Yeah, I guess so. At the same time, like, that's kind of what Stray Dog Army is there to do.
There's a job to be done, and they will do it. Then following that, we had the ultimate finesser, Chris Bay, representing Bullet Club, defeating Blake Christian 10 minutes and 24 seconds.
Yeah, very flip-oriented match. A lot of high-flying, fast-paced. Didn't overstay its welcome. 10 minutes, 24 seconds. So, I mean, not overly long, but I felt like both guys kind of got a good chance to shine here. I am interested to see how things shake out with Chris Bay in relation to the New Japan Impact working relationship and how that's going to span, with the kind of ongoing Bullet Club storyline and his role in that, especially as the borders kind of lift. Is he going to be one of those guys that they, feel inclined to bring over for like a Super Junior or something like that? Or, are there other people that they can actually invest into that are not tied to an outside company? So that's something that's like, I kind of got my eye on to see how that all works itself out,
Yeah, I feel like Chris Bay would be one of those guys that would try to bring in, let's say, if they can bring people in for Best of the Super Juniors, because if you remember for the Super J Cup, before they even had the real official partnership with Impact, he was one of the kind of the first Impact guys that they brought in for that Super J Cup, and he was kind of the first Impact guy that was on Strong, and now he's in Bullet Club. I definitely feel like he would be a guy that if they had a chance, they would bring him over.
No, I definitely could see that. My only thinking is he works for Impact,
Right.
Is it worth it to invest long term in a guy like that? Maybe we're trying to coerce to come over, down the line, or, are there other, juniors that are free agents that are working for New Japan Strong, or, that are free agents out there that we could actually bring over and sign if they were inclined,
Yeah. So yeah, Chris Bay gets to win here with the Art of Finesse Cutter on Chris Bay. So really fun matchup there. And then we had the main event of Buddy Matthews representing the House of Black defeating Ren Narita.
Yeah, this match, in all honesty, I watched all 3 of these matches at our fan meetup, and I only actually just saw the visuals because they didn't allow us to really blast the audio because they had music playing. So, I didn't get the full experience, but from what I saw, this match seemed to rule. I mean, they were like really going out there and having like a great match. In fact, with even without the benefit of the full immersive experience and kind of watching this with the sound off, this might be the best Buddy Matthews match in New Japan that we've seen so far, and that includes the Okada match.
Yeah, this is his first match since the Okada match at Battle in the Valley. This was a very hard-hitting matchup here between both these guys. And
Has he not had any other strong matches?
No, this is his first strong since that November match.
Oh, man. I guess just because we're seeing him on AEW, I felt like he wrestled. Well, I like this better than the Okada match.
Yeah, I'd probably have to go back and watch the Okada. This was definitely more hard-hitting. A little bit of a faster pace. But yeah, really good stuff here. Narita's looking great in all his matches that he's been having with guys like this. And it seems like Matthews, maybe he's like feuding or maybe starting a feud with the LA Dojo because he beats Narita here. And then on the Strong taping that we attended, he faced off against Shimura. So taking on some of these LA Dojo excursion young lion guys. So interesting to see what direction there is.
It makes sense to me because, I mean, Buddy Matthews, he likes to steal from the best guys out there. He stole, a lot of his look and his move set from Kenny Omega. Made sense. And then who was the last guy that, feuded with the LA Dojo? Will Ospreay. Buddy Matthews just going to steal his shit, too. Makes sense to me.
So, yeah, Buddy, he gets to win here with the Murphy's Law, gets the pin, and gets his first victory in New Japan.
No, in all seriousness, though, he's phenomenal. This match ruled. Definitely big recommend. So
then next week on night 4 of the Rivals Tour, we're going to have a main event elimination match with Tom Lawler, Gerald Nelson, Royce Isaacs, J.R. Kratos, and Dane Limelight, so all Team Filthy, taking on Fred Rosser, Clark Connors, Taylor Rust, Adrian Quest, and the DKC. Our good friend Rocky Romero will be going one-on-one with Black Tiger, and then the show will open up with Red Def Daniel Garcia, the sports entertainer, taking on Yuya Uemura.
Nice. That's definitely one worth checking out, especially since, chronologically this occurred before what we saw Sunday, so maybe that will fill in some gaps that we're not privy to storyline-wise.
Right, we were in the future.
We were ahead.
All right, let's shift gears here to domestic New Japan proper for the New Japan Cup. So we had a few nights of tournament action here since the last time we recorded. So I think we should just do the same thing that we did last time, maybe talk about some of the undercard stuff that's been happening as a whole, and then we can focus in on the tournament matchups.
Okay, well, I mean, the major story that everyone's kind of been talking about is the amalgamation of the Gorillas of Destiny, that's Tama Tonga and Tangaloa, as well as Master Heater Jado, into maybe Hantai, maybe a loose alliance with Hantai. It's hard to say exactly what it's leading to, but, night after night, they've been wrestling against different combinations of the Bullet Club. In most cases, some of the more classic members like Chase Owens, Fale, Gato, and then maybe some other guys like, Phantasmo and Ishimori. Usually a group of them. They haven't really been facing off too much with House of Torture. I think a little bit Yujiro. With that being said, though, they've kind of found themselves in a spot where they've started to either get rescued or come to the save. At first, it was the team members of 6 or 9. And we started to see a loose affiliation and kind of acceptance between Tama Tonga and Taguchi, which was, as weird as that sounds, it kind of worked because night after night, GOD are going out there as hot, fiery baby faces, jumping, getting the jump on Bullet Club or vice versa, and, fighting from underneath and doing hot tags and, just getting super fired up. And for whatever reason, it is working. We kind of saw the genesis of this during the G1 this past year, especially with Tama Tonga. And it's really, really getting over with the live audiences and then kind of pairing them with some of the Hantai guys, with them kind of giving them their seal of approval as well. It's sort of working out. And then even on the most recent show, at the end of the match, God and 6 or 9, they lost to the Bullet Club through nefarious means, and they were getting jumped. And then none other than Hiroshi Tanahashi came out, made the save, cleared house, and then kind of left God standing there with Tanahashi, and him and Tama Tonga like shook hands. And I mean, you know, Kevin Kelly made it very clear. He's like, this doesn't mean they're best friends, doesn't mean they're gonna go out and like have Korean barbecue and all that, but for the time being, they have some sort of understanding where there is, some peace between them, which is, it's interesting because the crowd's eating it up.
Yeah, the crowd has been loving it, especially that Cork and Hall crowd that we got. I believe that, night 11, March 18th. It was a huge Corkin crowd. It was like over 1,000 people, one of the biggest Corkins since the pandemic's happened. And you had some fans in there who were kind of breaking the rules and who were chanting along at certain points and gasping loud and really getting into the show. And especially during that match with the Bullet Club match with, I think it was, Bad Luck Fale, ELP, and Ishimori against Tama Tonga and Jado. The crowd was really fired up for that, especially like when Jado and Gato, or just when Jado was in there, and then eventually, when Gato post-match kind of came out, the crowd was really fired up with Jado kind of making his comeback on these guys, and even when Tama and Tank Lower were getting fired up. So, yeah, it seems like the crowd is really in, like you mentioned, into this, new God face turn. They did the favor first. They saved Wato and Taguchi from a beatdown because ELP and Ishimori have their eyes set on the junior tag title. So these guys have been facing off against each other as well in undercards, and there was a big attack on 6 or 9 after one night, and then God made a save. Then the next night, 6 or 9 made the favor, returned the favor, and it kind of shook hands. And then after that, they've been teaming together in 10-man tags against the Bullet Club. And like you mentioned, Tanahashi made a save on the most recent show, and then Tama tweeted out a picture of him shaking Taguchi's hand, and he said Hantai. So it definitely seems like, that's where he's trying to at least make his allegiance, that he is a part of the New Japan home team, that he's going to represent Hantai. I know there's a lot of questions on whether or not, like, God was going to be its own faction or it was going to be a Bullet Club splinter, but it seems like it's very clear they are 100% out of Bullet Club, and it seems like they're going to just join the New Japan team, the Hantai unit.
Well, I'm not completely convinced that that's exactly what's going on, because on the website, they did sort of create a sub-unit for just the God guys as of yet. So that kind of remains to be seen. I mean, we might get a situation where they do form their own faction. I think they might even be like playing around with that idea, seeing how they kind of come across live to the audience with some of the other Hantai guys. And who knows, maybe it could lead to a new faction, which I think is something that people are always asking about. When will there be a new faction, yada yada yada. And I mean, for my money, if you're going to split off Tama Tonga and try to make money off of him and maybe potentially push him as a top guy, is he going to have more success as just another faceless member of Hantai, or as the leader of some sort of group? I think the obvious answer is, being the head of a group in New Japan carries a lot of weight, and especially when it comes to booking. So hopefully that is the case. I mean, I don't know. I think that's more interesting anyways than, them just kind of being, aligned with like Kojima and, those guys. So I don't know.
Yeah, either way, it's just refreshing with them as babyfaces now. It opens up the door for some new matchups and some interesting things that they could do with those guys. So yeah, it's cool to see that working out so far. And also, like I mentioned, Bullet Club's used tag teams have been targeting the champs, Team 6 or 9. And then also on the undercard, I mean, a lot of it's been just kind of tournament preview matches, and then I think it's kind of a lot of just like a random matches from guys who are not in the tournament. I think the main storyline stuff has been the Bullet Club stuff, the junior tag stuff. Looks like at the last show there was a angle. It seemed like we might be getting United Empire challenging for the tag team titles. Hanare, Cobb, and Ocon, they picked up a victory over some of the tag champs. See if I can find that match.
The only other really ongoing feud that's kind of playing out is we're still seeing a lot of interaction between Show and Desperado. So, I mean, it's become very clear, it was even clear last week, but it's become even more so that shows the next challenger for Desperado's junior title. So
yeah. So the 21st, Hanare, Okan, and Cobb, they defeated Goto, Yoshihashi, and Hanma. And then post-match, they were kind of jaw-jacking. Kevin Kelly was hinting maybe these guys could do Freebird rules if they were to challenge for the titles and win them. So it does seem that at some point, maybe at the big April show, we're going to get some kind of United Empire team against Bishamon.
Yeah, which, we'll get there when we get there. But, I mean, I think that's something we've been talking about for quite a while, and we're finally getting it.
Right. I mean, we've talked about how dominant the United Empire has been as a team, especially initially Cobb and Okan, and then with Okan and Hanare at one point. So both of those teams have been felt pretty strong, even in multi-man matches. I feel like United Empire, as all four guys together, have been booked pretty strong as well. So they've been a dominant unit. I'm interested to see which pairing they're going to go with, but it's going to be some fresh blood, a new team, new challengers.
Nice. Well, let's get into New Japan Cup proper action.
So, yeah, let's start with night 10, March 17th. So, semi-main event, first New Japan Cup match of the night. We had Zack Saber Jr. defeating the Great Okan 20 minutes and 3 seconds.
Yeah, so if you listened to our preview episode for the New Japan Cup, this was the match that kind of broke the bracket that I laid out during that episode. I had Great Okan going all the way through to face Okada at the next title challenge in April, which looking at the tournament now seems kind of crazy. But, given the history of the New Japan Cup, that pick didn't really seem that far out of left field. You take a look at the way that some of these tournaments have played out, and they've always played out with upsets and, up-and-comers and, older talents and things like that. But during this whole entire first round, or, these first 3 rounds, they went completely chalk. And because of that, we saw Zack Saber Jr. prevail over Great Okan here, 20 minutes. Very similar match to the one that they had, maybe a little bit, a tad bit longer, but similar to the really good match that they had in the G1 this past year. I liked what I saw here. I liked the story they told, the work from both guys, but I kind of knew going into it based on the fact that Okan was like eating pinfalls in multi-man tags, and Zack has not only just had good matches, but he himself has been putting in excellent work and like kind of worked on his physique and been even like debuting a lot of new moves during this tournament. I was like, fuck, he's gonna like probably eat up Okan. And now he didn't exactly eat up Okan. I think that they tried to still keep Okan strong, like giving him a lot of offense. And he kind of seemed, to a certain extent, maybe even a little bit more dominant. But they did the exact same finish with Zack catching him in the armbar, stretching it out from a standing position where Okan tried to maybe powerbomb him, and he taps out almost immediately. So very reminiscent of what we saw of them in the G1 this past year. And Zack Saber, gets past Okan and moves on to the 4th round.
Yeah, like we talked about off air as far as like the booking and a lot of this being chalk. It was like, like you mentioned, previous years in the Japan Cup, it seemed like you had more upsets. It was about building new guys, and you'd get to a finals and it necessarily wouldn't be, the greatest pairing in the world. It might be a Shibata Fale kind of situation there, and you're trying to build somebody based off of the finals and the tournament. But here, they're trying to get the biggest stars in the biggest positions in these quarter and semifinals and eventually in the finals. So we had the bigger, more established guys winning, and we got some interesting, quarterfinals, semifinals that happened this past show. And yeah, the Saber Okan match was really, really good. I think I like the G1 match a little bit more, but essentially,
yeah, me too.
Like you mentioned, pretty similar. A lot of grappling. Okan, technical wrestler award of the Tokyo Sports 2021. And so taking on against, the Bryan Danielson award runner-up here. So very technical match, a lot of grappling, a lot of whole exchanges. The key downfall for Okan in this match is he had a submission on Saber, and Saber was on the verge of passing out. And instead of just going for the ref stoppage or submission, he let go, hit the eliminator, or tried to hit the eliminator, but Saber was able to catch him in the armbar like you mentioned. And then it was the same exact finish from the G1. Okan tried to power out. And then Saber dropped his weight, extended that arm, got the quick tap out there, and Saber advanced.
Nice. Well, then that takes us to the main event of the evening where we saw Will Ospreay defeat Sonata 16 minutes and 56 seconds. And this was a good match, but a match that was full of controversy and online discourse.
Yeah, so I guess the big thing that everybody's talking about here is the injury that Sonata suffered. So Sonata suffered a fractured left orbital bone in this matchup with Will Ospreay. He's set to miss at least the rest of the New Japan Cup tour. There isn't a current timetable on when he'll be returning to the ring. And so in the match here, Ospreay was going for standing shooting star. It seemed like they were trying to do Sonata getting the knees up at some point, but it looked like Ospreay's knee came right down on the left side of Sonata's face.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. The way you laid it out. This is something where there's been a lot of discussion online as to what occurred, how this occurred, who's at fault, who's not at fault, what the company should do, what the company shouldn't do, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to give you my take on it as someone that's, done a little bit of wrestling, but also, studied it for quite a while. Sonata's the guy that's the base. He's the one that's laying on the ground, taking the move. And just like you mentioned, Jeremy, he puts his knees up. So one of two things was either happening there. Either they had planned the spot where he's supposed to get the knees up and counter the move, or there was some sort of miscommunication and he thought he was supposed to do that and he wasn't. One thing I can tell you, though, is I've heard a lot of people say Sonata like fidgeted or got out of place or he wasn't in the right position. That's bullshit. How can you be in a wrong or right position for the standing shooting star press? He's prone, laying on the ground. Did you see that man turn?
I did think I saw him move a little bit, but not enough to where it would be weird, though.
I can tell you how he moved. He put his knees up. That's all he did. I went back and rewatched this just to be sure because I've heard different versions of the story. And, the unfortunate thing is, like, there were gifs of this on Twitter, but, Bushi Road and TV Asahi, they pull those down. So, you can't, it's not even easy to, like, go back and rewatch it. But I found a gif online, and I rewatched it many, many times. This guy didn't move. Now, who did inadvertently land their knee into someone's face? It was Will Ospreay. Now, there's people on both sides of the argument. Some people saying like, "Oh, Will is reckless" and all that. I wouldn't say he was reckless because you kind of need to have a long-standing history of botches and risking people's health and putting people in jeopardy. And I don't think that that's something that's descriptive of Will Ospreay at all. So I think some of the bad faith arguments that are out there, people calling for Will to be kind of like, disciplined or, canceled or whatever, that's a little far-fetched. It's wrestling and accidents happen. At the same time, I think we also should be willing to say who was at fault. Will Ospreay was at fault. 100,000,000% Will Ospreay fucked up. And it comes down to the fact that he had a man laying there prone and he didn't throw himself up to do the standing shooting star press from an angle that was safe to land it where he is opposite the guy's body. He landed, perpendicular so that they're basically in like almost a 69 position, and he brought his knees down on the dude's face. Was it probably just a mistiming or a miscalculation or a misjudgment? Sure. Like, did he fuck up? Yes. I think we should be willing to say he fucked up. He did. Do I think he should be like thrown out of wrestling or be labeled dangerous? Like, no, there's plenty of wrestlers that have like messed up and hurt guys on accident. It's just, that's what it is. But I will say something that was really not good. Okay. And I rarely do this. I was listening to Wrestling Observer radio this past, or newsletter, or what is it?
Wrestling Observer Radio?
Radio, yeah. And I heard Dave Meltzer say that Sonata was at fault for getting his own orbital bone broken because Will, was in the right position and Sonata moved. That's bullshit. That didn't happen. That's, as the conservatives like to say, fake news. I don't think that is professional or good to blame the person that got their orbital bone broken by somebody else for their injury. I don't like that at all, and I think that's some bullshit because he is a fanboy of Will Ospreay. And then he gave like a play-by-play of how he thought it went down, and it's very clear that I think this is just my opinion. This is where I think it is actually super fucked up. He said that Sonata moved, causing Will to accidentally hurt him, but then Will had the wherewithal to save the match and to carry Sonata through the rest of the match, even though Red Shoes and Sonata were fucking it up. To me, if you just want my honest opinion, I guess I'm kind of going into the realm of speculation here. It sounds like someone fed him this story. I wonder who could have possibly spoke to Dave Meltzer and fed him the story about how Red Shoes and Sonata were at fault. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all. I don't like the idea. And maybe it wasn't Will, but to me, that's what it sounds. If you're putting two and two together, it sounds like Will went to Dave and he's like, "Here's the account of what happened," and then he put himself over and buried the guy that he hurt. I don't know. That shit doesn't sit right with me, and I don't think that Dave going on the air and regurgitating that story is professional at all. I don't like that.
Yeah, it seems definitely kind of hard to blame Sonata here in this situation. I mean, like you mentioned with Ospreay, we've seen him do that standing shooting star thousands of times. Has never hurt anybody before. It definitely seems like, yeah, there was some kind of miscommunication. Sonata thought he was supposed to get the knees up to block the move, and also Ospreay thought he was hitting the move, and yeah, it was.
I don't even know if that's the case. I think he probably was intended to land on the knees, probably.
Yeah.
And was just out of position.
Yeah, came down to that weird angle right on Sonata's face, and got his orbital bone broke, and then that led into the end of the match. Credit to Sonata, he got up and continued the match because after that he went for the moonsault, which he missed, and then Ospreay hit the hitting blade for a near fall, and then he started firing off elbows and strikes to the head. And it took a while for Red Shoes to finally call for the ref stoppage there.
Yeah, and that was something too. When I was listening to Dave, is he basically said that from the orbital bone break, that Sonata was knocked completely unconscious, and that he was out for the rest of the match, and that Will had to improvise the finish and go to a ref stoppage finish. Which I think there might be some truth to that, but like anyone who watched the match clearly saw that this guy was not knocked unconscious. He, like you said, got up, did moves. He did an over-under spot. He did a freaking moonsault. He did a skull's end. These are not things that someone who is knocked out cold is able to do, running
Right.
around the ring, coming off the top rope. Fuck out of here with that noise.
Yeah, I mean, obviously his eye and that side of the face was starting to swell up really bad, but he was moving fine and went up, like I said, hit the moonsault. He was doing the rest of the match, and maybe the planned finish was just a ref stoppage. They have been getting over Will's strikes and the power of the hidden blade in his elbows and forearms, so maybe that was just a planned finish, or maybe it was a thing where Sonata's like, all right, my face is starting to hurt a lot more now. Let's just improvise, do a ref stoppage finish, hit me with elbows in the move. That didn't get sent to Red Shoes right away, and that's why Red Shoes was kind of stalling on that call. But I
think all of that is plausible. Like you said, that's kind of been Will's story, is them getting over his strikes. And he hasn't finished anybody with the Stormbreaker. It's all been elbow shots, so it would kind of make sense. But I could also see if where they needed to go to a improvised finish for the sake of the injury, that makes sense too. What I didn't think was great was the portrayal of Red Shoes at the end, where Will is landing an ungodly amount of ground and pound elbow, strikes to the side of Sonata's head. And he's just not covering up. He's not defending intelligently. And he's just taking them. And Red Shoes is like trying to get Will off of him, like literally trying to pull him off. But like in a real fight, when the referee's trying to pull someone off the fighter, that means the other fighter is done and that's the end of the match. But like Will, as a character, is not relenting because he's not ringing the bell and he's clearly not ending the match. And so from Will's perspective, he's like, you just want to give this guy a time to check on him and to give him a breather when I've got him out of here, just end the match, which I think actually, from a kayfabe standpoint, makes sense. But it made Red Shoes look incompetent because they went through this diatribe like 2 times before the final stanza where he finally called for the bell. And even my girlfriend watching it, she's like, man, Red Shoes is like doing a piss poor job right now. And it's hard to tell if this was the intended story because I think they used that story in the next coming tournament match for Will Ospreay. It plays into the storyline. And maybe that was just them playing off of it. Or perhaps it was intended to be played out this way. That's something we don't really know. But, those are my thoughts on the match. I thought the match was pretty good. I saw a lot. I think the praise for it was a little higher than I would have given it. But overall, I thought the match was good. It was unfortunate what happened to Sonata. I didn't love the finish, but I do like ref stoppages in wrestling. I think they need to be done more often. But I just didn't like the way they did this one.
Yeah, I thought a lot of people were pretty high on this match and their opinions. I mean, I was like 3.5 on this match. I saw a lot of 4, 4.25, and that's fine if you liked it that much. But I don't know, for me, I just felt like these guys have had way better matches. I felt like it was just beginning part of the match was kind of slow, and then with the contrived finish and the shooting star botch, like it was just kind of a hot mess towards the end there. So obviously, good stuff in between all that, but yeah, it's just some problems there for me where I was more in the 3.5 range.
Yeah, I'm probably right there with you. Maybe a little higher, but yeah, I totally agree.
So then that'll take us to night 11, March 18th from Cork and Hall. This is a show I was talking about where we had that bigger Cork crowd and people were cheering a little bit and getting kind of rowdy here. So the semi-main event first tournament matchup, we had the Dragon Shingo Takagi defeating the Crown Jewel Chase Owens 16 minutes and 41 seconds.
Yeah, like you said, this crowd was getting a little rowdy. This was the first time. Well, one thing we do need to mention: this was the largest post-COVID attended crowd audience at a Cork and Hall show. Like I said, since the pandemic started, that's because they have lifted some of the mandates. Like there's still an attendance cap, but it's much higher than it was before. And you could really tell. I mean, the energy of the audience this night was awesome. I mean, even better than the subsequent nights on this tour. This was the first time in a long time where it felt like an actual New Japan audience, which I thought was really like invigorating. And even though we're not going, match by match on the undercard, if there were one show during this tournament that I would recommend just watching just for the sake of enjoyment, this was a good show to watch because the crowd was just into everything that was happening, all the angles, and then the top of the card as well. Like the audience was really with it this night, which was good. But Shingo versus Chase Owens, pretty good match. I mean, Chase Owens is a really good hand. We kind of know what to expect out of him. We've seen him, perform pretty well in this past year's G1, and he, obviously had a reputation for being a good worker prior to that, and he kind of lived up to that bill here against Shingo. I wouldn't call this like a blowaway match, but it told an important story where Chase is really working over the neck of Shingo and kind of working the injury. And we've seen in the past where Shingo's very good at selling a body part and making that kind of ailment a detriment to himself, and he sells the shit out of it to make the other guy look plausible as potential, upset. Even if, like, for instance, in this case, it's, Chase Owens against Shingo. I mean, it's still the New Japan Cup. Upsets happen. We've seen Chase Owens beat Hiroshi Tanahashi in Cork and Hall before, so it's not the most unbelievable idea in the world that he could maybe get one over on Shingo, especially with the kind of, like, reinvigoration of the Bullet Club lately. And he went out there and tried his damnedest to do just that and soften up Shingo for the package pile driver. But alas, it was, not enough to overcome Shingo. Shingo got him up for the Last of the Dragon, 1, 2, 3. and 16 minutes, Shingo goes on.
Yeah, this match was better than it had any right to be, and I know that we've supported Chase Owens before his in-ring work, but at the end of the day, it's Chase Owens and it's Shingo Takagi. But I thought this was a really good matchup here, and there was a story going into this on the backstage promos the night before. Shingo had mentioned that he's going to beat Chase Owens in 5 minutes. And so Chase had got pissed. And so the next night when they had the preview match, he had jumped Shingo, laid him out with the package pile driver, and was 5 minutes. I'm going to be the one that's going to beat you in 5 minutes. So then going into the match, Kevin Kelly was keeping track of the first 5 minutes to see if there's going to be a finish, and Chase was bringing it to Shingo, and it went on obviously a lot longer than 5 minutes. So Chase Owens kind of proved his worth here a little bit and proved that he can hang with the former World Heavyweight Champion. They went almost 16 minutes, or it went over 16:41. So yeah, Chase went out there, got to prove that he can hang with Shingo, and it wasn't just the quick 5-minute squash that Shingo was anticipating. Like you mentioned, really working on the neck of Shingo and kind of finding that chink in the armor and really breaking him down. And near package pile driver, like you mentioned, that's what he mentioned on commentary too. He's like, I've beaten Tanahashi. Chase is calling himself a legend killer because he's been beating a lot of New Japan dads and a lot of the older guys with the package pile driver, and so he's like, I'm the legend killer. I'm gonna beat Shingo next. And so yeah, he tried his hardest, but yeah, Shingo's able to escape that package pile driver, get him up for the last of the dragon, and get the win here.
Nice.
So then that will take us to the main event with Hiromu Takahashi, the ticking time bomb, defeating the never open weight champ Evil, 15 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yeah, another match where I was wrong on my predictions and my bracket, and I'm very glad to be so because there's been a really awesome story going throughout this tournament with Hiromu just kind of being this underdog. One of the top juniors, but a guy that can hang with the heavyweights, and he's been getting these unbelievable roll-up victories night after night, and he makes it to the third round. And I mean, Evil's the openweight champion. He's like one of the leaders or sub-leaders of House of Torture / Bullet Club, and he's just kind of been the thorn in everyone's side for the past 2 years, ever since his original victory in the New Japan Cup a couple years back. And we've seen these two guys, lots and lots and lots of history between Hiromu and Evil, going not just back to their LIJ days, but even prior to that, like as young lions coming up in the same class of the dojo, best friends in real life. We saw where when Hiromu was out with a broken neck, Evil was always bringing out his jacket, his cat, his memorabilia to kind of keep him in memory until he made his return. And we saw how things blew up between the two of them when Evil turned his back on LIJ, culminating in a title match between the two of them. Was that 2 years ago, I guess, at this point? And this was kind of the rematch of that. And I got to tell you, Jeremy, I love this match.
Bro, I love this match too. I don't know what it is about Hiromu and Evil. They have magic together. I love that. That was Evil's best title defense 2 years ago. Was against Hiromu. I believe that was Sengoku Lord. And here again, this was a really good Evil match with Hiromu, and like you mentioned, that Corkin Hall crowd, they were into it. There was magic in the air, and there was just so much going for this match. And I don't know what it is, but the House of Torture stuff works with the Evil Hiromu matches.
Well, here's the thing. Couple of things. So this was a little bit of a stripped down version of an Evil match. So I mean, you definitely had the bullshit and the chicanery and the Dick Togoism, but you didn't also have Sho, and you didn't also have Yujiro, and you didn't also have everything else that goes along with that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was a little bit scaled back, but also there is the fact that Hiromu and Evil, like I mentioned, behind the scenes, they're best friends in real life. And we've seen throughout the years, guys that are good friends will do way more to put each other over. They'll hit each other harder. They just go at a different pace. Plus, like all the years of familiarity, teaming together, wrestling against one another, coming up together in the dojo. There's just a lot of synergy and chemistry between these two. And beyond that, the story itself was just incredible. I mean, Evil always comes up on top in most cases. He's very protected, especially, even in cases where he should lose because he's so protected by his stable and their cheating ways. And then you got Hiromu, who's a junior, who's an underdog, who's a guy that, maybe shouldn't be beating Evil from a kayfabe stance. And, on the other side of this is a Shingo dream match looming that most people thought would never and could never happen. And like people are just in that Cork and Hall crowd are just living and breathing with the idea that Hiromu might be able to get past Evil. So, in a vacuum, every single bit of cheating that Evil did really mattered. The crowd reacted to it every single time Hiromu got a hope spot or fired up spot. It worked. This is what we've talked about the difference between bad heat with cheating and good heat with cheating. And this was an example in a vacuum of how the House of Torture stuff could work if done correctly. We've said that many, many times. They just scaled it back a little bit, picked their spots better, did it when it meant something, and had the right opponent for it to actually garner sympathy and reaction for it. And it just worked on a high level. Plus, the work rate was just Evil bumped his ass off, sold his ass off. It was incredible.
Yeah, it started off really hot with Hiromu attacking Evil during the entrance and then kind of brawling. And then, it's good stuff in the ring, like you mentioned. Every Hiromu near fall. There was a time bomb, one near fall that the whole crowd and everybody bit on there. That was a great near fall. And like we saw in the Suzuki match, there was a lot of roll-ups and some near falls there. There was one roll-up where Hiromu had Evil beat, but Dick Togo had distracted the referee. But then that led into the finish where Hiromu got up and he ended up pushing Evil into Dick Togo, bouncing Togo into the guardrail. And he hit Evil with the Everything is Evil STO and got the win.
Yeah, and that was something that was very, very, very shocking to me because, like, Hiromu got so many near falls, and I was biting on all of them, and I was just like hoping and praying he'd win. Like, this was a match that had me marking out. I was like in the living room, like pacing around, like, come on, like let's do this, motherfucker, And then when he hit him with the Everything's Evil, that was really cool, and I marked out. But I had no expectation that Evil would stay down for the 1, 2, 3. I can't think of too many times ever in my entire experience of watching wrestling where anybody got hit with their own finishing maneuver by an opponent who didn't also use that move as their finisher and then take the 1, 2, 3 loss.
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of times where people steal the move and get near falls from it, but I've never seen someone that I can remember steal a finisher and beat that guy with his finisher.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably happened, but I can't recall it either. And that was so cool, especially in New Japan. I feel like we do see a lot of, in big matches, guys stealing each other's finishers, but it always leads to a near fall. So when he hit him with the Everything is Evil, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a cool near fall spot. 1, 2, 3. I was like, what? He beat him.
Awesome.
I was so happy, especially too because if you listen back to the prediction show, Shingo Hiromu was something that I predicted, and you and Chris were like, no, that's not gonna. You were kind of swaying me away from that. I'm like, I don't know.
You were Mark. You're booking like a Mark. And apparently, so is Gato.
Hey man, we need some good matches in this tournament. Fresh matchups, kind of a dream matchup here. Why not? And so I was very excited with Shingo Hiromu getting the win here on this night, leading to that Shingo Hiromu matchup, and a really fun main event here. And also, like I was also looked at my prediction too, was the fact that Hiromu could potentially now challenge for the Never Openweight title. We got a big show coming up in April, so we'll see if this win will lead to Never Openweight title shot or just more openweight matches for Hiromu this year.
So before we talk about the rest of the tournament, let's just do a quick rundown. So that was the end of the third round. We're going into the fourth round, which has concluded. We're going to cover those matches. But at this point, we're at the quarterfinals. Look at this quarterfinal lineup. You got Tetsuya Naito versus Jeff Cobb, Kazuchika Okada versus Chima, and then on the other side of the bracket, you got Zack Sabre Jr. versus Will Ospreay and Shingo Takagi versus Hiromu Takahashi. Believably, at this point, any of those 8 guys, if they were to go through, could easily be deemed the winner of the New Japan Cup and be a challenger for Okada, except for himself, of course. They have never, and I defy you, whoever you are, listener, go look at the brackets for every single New Japan Cup in history. They've never had a semifinal that was filled with this many stars, let alone a quarterfinal of the tournament. There were a lot of complaints about the booking of the early part of the tournament, and I think some of that's still rightfully so. But the drawback when you don't have, the drawback of not having any major matches in the early parts of the tournament, and the other drawback of not, there not being a lot of upsets, that is kind of balanced out and countered out by the fact that we got 8 superstars in dream matches in major, aligned matches going into the last 3 rounds of the tournament, which is like, I don't want to say it completely makes up for it, but dude, it's really, when I saw this, I was like fucking fired up. I'm like, oh my God, look at how amazing. Like, now my argument would be they could have just done a tournament with just these guys. I would have been happy.
Right.
But, with that being said, like, dude, what were you thinking when you saw this lineup of the quarterfinals, these, last 8 gentlemen?
Yeah, I was very excited because, this tournament, it's been kind of a sludge on some nights to watch, and especially towards the beginning part, you had a lot of guys that maybe shouldn't have been in the tournament. It was, it was kind of slow, and we weren't getting a ton of great matchups. And so now we're, as we got closer and closer to the quarters, we're getting better matchups, and now get to these quarters, it's like, man, Naito Ka, we saw that Wrestle Kingdom, that was a great matchup. Okada and Chima, who would have thought that we would have gotten that matchup? Shingo Hiromu, who would have thought we would have gotten that? And then Ospreay and Saber, those guys, they can sleepwalk into 4 3/4, 5-star any day with their chemistry and history. So looking at that, it was like, man, this is a stacked quarterfinal. We're going to get a series of great matches between the quarters, semi, and finals. And like you mentioned, any one of these 8 guys could realistically go all the way through and win the whole tournament. All these guys have had title matches in the past, former champions, former tournament winners. There's such a stacked quarterfinal and so many different possibilities for potential rematches and first-time matchups. That was just really cool to see.
One thing, too, that I started to think about is like, at this point, you have so many major matches that they're doing, and it's a New Japan Cup. So it's like, normally they hold these off for like later in the year, G1, things like that. It really got the wheels like in my brain kind of turning, where I'm like, why are they blowing all this stuff off? Now, there is the part where it's like, okay, some of the restrictions are being lifted. Some of the numbers of attendance and interest have been down. We need to do something big. So there is that part to it. So that makes sense to me, where I'm like, okay, they're really trying to do something really great, really enticing and exciting at the end. At the same time, could this be an indication that they know that there's a possibility of travel restrictions being lifted entirely for later in the year, meaning outsiders possibly coming in, and that would mean like blowing off some of these bigger matches now isn't so much of a setback if hypothetically we got guys coming in for the G1 later in the year that kind of negate them even, doing these matches right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And, we've already been seeing some athletes come in to Japan for other sports, for them foreigners. So maybe for New Japan, it's going to be, maybe come G1 season, or maybe even Best Super Juniors, which is going to be in May again. Maybe they had the go-ahead that they're going to be able to bring in some foreigners. I think it makes total sense. All right, let's blow off some of these bigger matchups now, do some big rematches now, because come the second half of the year, we can bring in Jon Moxley, we can bring in Bryan Danielson, we can bring back Lance Archer, we can bring in all these AEW guys and independent guys that want to work New Japan. We can bring in the strong guys. We can bring in Chris Dickinson, Filthy Tom Lawler, Fred Rosser. We can bring in
U.S. Indie darling Suzuki.
Yeah.
Bring him in from the States, see if we can get some dates on him.
Yeah, the LA Dojo guys, like just between strong AEW and the independent guys, there's so many guys and Impact guys, which, between all the people that New Japan's been working with, there's so many guys that they could bring in for Super Juniors and G1 and shows for the second half of the year. So it does seem like there's hope.
Now, does them doing these big matches right now, does that necessarily mean that's exactly what's happening? No, it doesn't. But in the past, the prevailing sentiment has always been they don't do those big matches during this tournament because they're saving them for later on down the year. And so that's kind of the thing that gets me thinking, like, what could be going on where they don't necessarily need to save those matches for later? You know what I mean? But at the same time, business is not great, so they might just be trying to throw everything they can
right
to reinvigorate fan interest, which either way I'm happy because this is awesome. But let's jump into the night 12. This was March 20th, so this was like 2 nights ago, and we had our first match of quarterfinals action as Tetsuya Naito defeated Jeff Cobb, 19 minutes and 4 seconds. And I know a lot of people were surprised by this, except for this guy.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were questioning on whether or not they would set up a potential Naito-Okada rematch, especially, too, when you look at the way New Japan books sometimes when guys have pretty quick rematches. There is usually some kind of 50-50 booking, so Naito won at Wrestle Kingdom. I think the normal booking pattern would be for Cobb to get the win back here, and then you set up a rubber match down the road on a big show to kind of blow off the feud for the year. But a little bit of a different direction here. Naito ends up winning here and defeating Jeff Cobb, who has been like a juggernaut in this tournament and destroyed all of his opponents leading up to this Naito match.
Yeah, and that's something that wasn't surprising to me because, I mean, of course, could Cobb go through? Yes, but I felt like the logic that I laid out in the early part of our preview episode kind of held up here in that we saw an entire trilogy of matches between Jeff Cobb and Okada last year. And it's my opinion that whoever won this match was punching their ticket to defeating Okada in the next round. That still remains yet to be seen. But if Cobb beats Okada, that's another win in a fourth match of the series. And typically, whoever is the runner-up or the winner of the New Japan Cup, they're either going to get the April or the May title shot. So that means we're getting 5 Jeff Cobb Okada matches in less than a year. That's really not New Japan style. I know they do a lot of matches, but like usually it's in a calendar year period, like 4 max. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Cobb would definitely lose the title match to Okada. Well, maybe not definitely. I'm sure there's probably some people listening thinking like, well, he could win, but if you're reading the tea leaves, I believe Okada's holding this title for the greater part of this year. I don't see him losing it, in my opinion, honestly, until Wrestle Kingdom at the latest, or soonest. So, I'm just thinking like, I know a lot of people wanted Cobb to get this win and get the Okada match, but I'm like, man, another big prominent loss to Okada in a title match. Now we're getting into Sonata territory with Cobb. I don't know that that's what you want to do with his character. Whereas with Naito, that's still a match that there's a lot of like interest in Japan in it. They've done it in the big, they've done the Wrestle Kingdom series. Now they're ready to kind of scale the feud down and do it on the B-level pay-per-views. We saw the same thing happen between Okada and Tanahashi. After they did their big multi-series of matches in the Tokyo Dome, we saw them scale down and start doing those matches on the B pay-per-view just a few years ago. That's what I think they're doing with him and Naito and getting as much juice out of the squeeze as they possibly can. That's why it just made the most sense to me that Naito would beat Cobb here. I know some people think Cobb taking a second loss to Naito isn't beneficial to Cobb, but in my opinion, 2 back-to-back losses to Naito is a lot less damaging than like losing 3 out of 2 on big scale, big shows against Okada, because then it sets him back way back, and now he's not really a guy established to win a title. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I thought they did a good job of protecting Cobb in this matchup, even with the loss. So obviously Cobb still has the knee taped up. So Naito targeted the knee all throughout the match. So he came in with an injury, and Naito worked the injury throughout the match. And also a big story for Naito in this tournament is the fact that he has not won a match with the Destino proper. He's been doing a bunch of roll-ups to advance each night and get the wins in tournaments. So we saw that again here. He did hit a version of the Destino. It wasn't the Destino proper, but that led to Naito eventually reversing the tour of the islands into a roll-up to get the win. So using the momentum off the tour of the islands to roll up Cobb, kind of get the quick 1, 2, 3 after this 19-minute hard-fought match. So it just seemed like Cobb slipped on a banana peel, and Naito kind of got lucky here.
Yeah, and we saw Naito do something very similar to Tanahashi in the last part of the round, or the previous round. I'm kind of wondering like what LIJ's been up to between Naito and then Hiromu Takahashi picking up all these roll up wins. Like, did they like go to like a Carl Gotch specialty pin like seminar, like where they're all like working on like neck bridges and different like roll through sequences? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, they bought one of those like Granby roll DVDs they sell back in the day.
Yeah.
Teach you all these like quick like amateur wrestling like reversals and pins.
Cradles.
Yeah.
I think that they watched they watched like a Dean Malenko like seminar online and just like figured out how to do all the roll throughs that he used to do. That's basically what's going on here. But so Naito beats Cobb. Good match. I did not like it as much as their Wrestle Kingdom match necessarily, but I think that Naito and Cobb have some pretty good chemistry, and I think that they probably got a better match down the line. And here's the other reason why I felt like Cobb losing made sense. Sometimes New Japan does go 50-50, but oftentimes when you have a big star against a young up-and-comer who's beating everybody, if Naito's the only guy that's kind of got Cobb's number and has beaten him outright clean in recent memory, and everyone else Cobb's kind of ran through, makes sense to me for Naito to be the guy to beat him again and prove, I really do got your number, kid. Because guess what? One of these days, and when I say one of these days, I'm not talking like 5 years from now. I'm talking about, in the next 8 months, Cobb's going to beat Naito probably in the G1, and it's going to be a big moment, and people are going to be like, oh, shit. And from that point forward, we're going to know Cobb can beat Naito at any point of his time or choosing. You know what I mean? So it's another like progression step in his character where like, he's not just this bruising juggernaut, but he has guys to overcome. He has goals to obtain, and like Naito's one of them.
Yeah, I think another story here that they kind of told with the United Empire, these guys is kind of falling out one by one. So eventually, you had Hanare being the first one eliminated, then Great Okan gets eliminated in the third round, and now Jeff Cobb getting eliminated in the quarterfinal that left Ospreay as the last Empire guy standing. And those guys had kind of been jaw-jacking and teasing each other like, oh, we're going to face each other and it'll be Cobb Ospreay in the finals, and we didn't quite get that.
Yeah, it also kind of tells you where they're at in the pecking order because they literally all lost in the order that I think the company views them.
Exactly, yep.
But so with that victory, Naito moves on to the semifinals, and that brings us to the main event of the evening. We got a first-time dream matchup between two Ultimo Dragon Toriyama Mexico trainees in Kazuchika Okada, the reigning IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, and he defeated Dragon Gate legend, founder of OWE, Chima, 20 minutes and 52 seconds.
Real quick, before we finish up talking about that matchup, there was a question here from Reddit user Les Commission 7252. It says, if another Jeff Cobb loss, can you say that in the G1 this year, he's most likely to win it? As a story, he can be that he can't win the big one, as he lost to Ibushi at Dominion last year, lost to Okada in the B-Block finals, and now 2 straight losses to Naito.
I wouldn't say that this indicates to me that he's likely to win the G1. I do think his previous year's success in the G1 could potentially be the catalyst for why he might be favored, especially if he goes into the G1 with some like steam,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what happens between May and presumably August if we're back to the regular like schedule. Actually, no, that it would start in what, July?
July, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. I still don't feel like Jeff Cobb is favored to win this year's G1. I guess it depends on what's going to happen with Wrestle Kingdom, but I know a lot of people have a lot of faith in Jeff Cobb. I'm one of them. I like Jeff Cobb, and I think the company has really done a lot to like build him and make him. And I see why so many people had him favored on their brackets for the New Japan Cup and everything, and really got behind him after last year's G1. But I still don't think he's gotten to that place just yet. I still see him as like upper B level Gaijin player right now.
Right. He's kind of in that Michael Elgin role.
Yep.
That kind of higher, upper mid card, super strong guys in. They're going to have great matches. They're going to get some pushes, some big wins, but they're not going to quite win a G1 or win the world title. And I do think Cobb has what it takes to surpass that level and to potentially, get a title, win the title at some point or get more title shots. But I can't see him winning the G1 right now. I definitely think the scenario like you mentioned of him beating Naito in the G1, I think that makes a ton of sense. But for him to win the whole thing, especially with the potential of outsiders being in, and you just got to think if Okada's holding it at Wrestle Kingdom, I don't think that they're going to do. I don't think Cobb Okada is a dome main event that you want to build up or hype up. I think they would probably have something else set for Okada.
There's also an albatross sitting around the neck of Jeff Cobb, and its name is the United Empire and Will Ospreay. You can't win the G1 and be a dome main eventer and be the number 2 guy in your own faction. Now, is Jeff Cobb right now of a caliber of guy and a player in the company where he could win a New Japan Cup and challenge for an IWGP title? Definitely. Could he challenge at like say a Dantaku or a King of Pro Wrestling? For sure. So I'm not like saying he's not the caliber, like IWGP caliber. Don't get it twisted. But when you're talking about someone that can main event the Dome, you can't main event the Dome and be the number 2 guy behind Will Ospreay in your own group. In order for him to be the guy I'm sorry, I got dogs going crazy. We're dog sitting. We got crazy dogs sitting in the background here. 1 second. Yeah, but what I was saying is like, in order for Jeff Cobb to be positioned, one of 2 things would have to happen. Either Will Ospreay would have to be out of the group and Jeff Cobb would have to be positioned as the top person, or Jeff Cobb would have to leave the United Empire, meaning he'd probably need to feud with Will Ospreay and go elsewhere and maybe go on a babyface turn. Something like that has to happen. As long as he's in this group, and I think the group's done a lot for him and will continue to do a lot for him, but he's not going to be a G1 winner if he's in the United Empire at this state.
Exactly, yeah. You rarely in any promotion ever see the number 2 guy in a stable really kind of outperform or do a big goal than the number 1 guy. So I think eventually if Cobb is ever going to win a G1 or win the world title, he will eventually, like you mentioned, either have to oust Ospreay and become the leader, or he gets kicked out, does his own, either joins, starts his own thing, or joins Hantai, or becomes a babyface and runs on his own.
Yep, exactly.
So now let's talk about Okada and Chima.
So this was a match that I think was pretty representative of what we saw out of Chima through most of the tournament. I don't think it was necessarily representative of what we saw from Okada, because I thought most of Okada's matches in the tournament skewed a bit higher than this one to a certain extent. But with that being said, it was a good match, and it was, for the, from just like the appeal of seeing 2 guys that you never expected to see wrestle one another. That part of it was really, awesome. but and it was good. I mean, mechanically, very, very good. The crowd was into it, but it just never really kicked into a higher gear. There were very few times where I felt like Okada was on the verge of a defeat, or where Shima had him in any sort of serious trouble. Okada did give a lot to Shima in this match, just like we saw him do with Wato and Desperado earlier in the tournament. We saw a lot of teases of Okada defeating Shima with the money clip. I liked that Okada broke out some of his Yave styling, so some of the throwback, and that plays into the story that both of these guys are Ultimo Dragon trainees. And Okada even, had some of his old offense. I forget for some reason, I wanted to say the name of the move, but I'm talking about the big move. It's almost like a suplex, but it turns it's like a Death Valley Driver.
The Heavy Rain.
Is that Heavy Rain?
I think so.
Yeah, well, he hit Shima with that. But the big story of the match was Shima trying to land the raw Meteora on Okada, meaning the Meteor with the knee pads pulled down. And even though he was able to hit different variants of the Meteor on Okada and was unable to put him away, he never was able to hit that full-fledged, unprotected Meteor on Okada. One has to wonder about Shima's knees at this state of the game, because there are many times where he came off the top rope and was still landing like flush on his knees.
Yeah, and I believe it was this match that he hit a Meteora to the outside to Okada on the floor.
Yeah, there was cool stuff like that, but ultimately, the finishing sequence was cool, but it came to the point where Okada hit him with what's it called, the landslide?
Yeah, he caught him with the landslide driver and then hits him with the Rainmaker, puts him away.
Yeah,
I thought it was
very definitive.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good match. I definitely thought it was more of a slower paced match than we saw from Shima in the tournament. I feel like Shima's other matches were a little bit shorter, a little bit faster. Because it was a main event, it was a more longer main event style and a little bit slower. But I thought both guys looked good. Shima, was doing a lot of the sequences that he used to win other matches, like in the Goto match, he had those multiple springboard Meteoras. He was hitting that on Okada at one point, but that wasn't enough to put Okada away. Like you mentioned, he was looking for that Meteor from the top rope with the knee pads down. Was just couldn't get a hold of that move, but yeah, ended up just running into the landslide and being put away with the Rainmaker at 20 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yeah, so good match. Ultimately, that sets up the semifinals on the left side of the bracket, as we are getting a rematch between Okada and Naito going into the finals.
Yeah, and there's been backstage comments of Naito saying, talking about, all right, Okada beat me in the title match earlier this year. I really need to kind of get this win to redeem myself. So it seems like a little bit of story here with this rematch of Okada and Naito, and I mean we'll get predictions on the second, but definitely seems like they're doing a redemption story here for Naito, which could lead to a third match with these guys this year.
Nice.
So let's move on now to night 13, which was the 21st, which was yesterday. So we had the first quarterfinal matchup of the Dragon, Shingo Takagi, defeating his LIJ stalemate, taking time bomb Hiromu Takahashi, 23 minutes and 43 seconds.
So, this is my hot take on the match. I like this match a lot, and I thought it was good to very good, but and I know we're going to probably disagree on this one, Jeremy, but I did not think this was a great or classic match whatsoever. I don't want to confuse anybody here. I thought the match was very good. I'd probably top out around like 4 stars on this, which is really good. But considering the fact that it was Shingo and Hiromu, first time ever match between these two guys, stablemates of LIJ. The entire time Hiromu was out, sidelined with that neck injury. Shingo was kind of the premier junior of LIJ during that time period. And by the time Shingo transitioned to heavyweight, Hiromu was back sort of, headlining for the junior division once again. And I think myself, along with many others, always kind of wondered what a Shingo Hiromu match would be like. This is kind of a dirty little secret. One thing I don't think a lot of people are willing to admit. and it is my opinion, since Hiromu has come back from the pec injury, he hasn't been the same guy that he was prior to that. Doesn't mean he's not a really good performer, but like the amount of like real classics that he's been putting out. Now, part of that might be the dance partners. He doesn't have the same selection of guys as like say Dragon Lee and Will Ospreay and that kind of
Kushida.
cast of Kushida. That might be part of it. But I've also noticed that even though commentary puts over how wild and crazy he still is, and he hasn't changed his style, I think his style has changed quite a bit. If you want my honest opinion, in fact, in this tournament's actually been the tournament where it feels like for the first time in a while where he's starting to break out some of that reckless abandonment again. And we saw a bit of that here in the match, but I expected this match to be a lot more hard hitting. I expected there to be a lot more drama going down the stretch. And truth be told, aside from there was one time bomb that Hiromu hit Shingo with, but at this point, that's not even really Hiromu's real finish. That might as well be like a setup finisher. I never felt like Shingo was in any sort of danger. They did do a good job of like having Hiromu come in fired up, but this kind of if you want my honest opinion, this reminded me of Shingo's run through Best of the Super Juniors, where he had very good matches with guys like say Ishimori and other people like that. But he didn't really peak into the classic type of match until like the finals against like Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
Everything prior to that was like this juggernaut Shingo fighting these juniors who didn't belong with him, and that's kind of the story. Well, the show match obviously is the other outlier, but like that's a good comparison. I don't think that this was. I've seen people like rating this really high. I could never compare this to say like Shingo Show because I don't think it compared this to like the Shingo Show series, and I think that that's probably like the pinnacle for junior style wrestler versus Shingo.
Yeah.
And I just feel like considering how good Hiromu and Shingo are and the history and everything like that, this could have been so much more. Putting that aside, the match was still fantastic. I'd still like recommend it, but I just wanted a lot more, and at 23 minutes I thought we were gonna, I felt like it was gonna kick into an even higher gear, and it just kind of didn't. It ended sort of abruptly. Hiromu lost, and I was like, damn, like I was expecting more.
Yeah, now I will say the one thing that I do agree about with you is I do think that these guys have a better match in them. However, me and cage match inmates seem to be on the same wavelength here. With this match, I rated this match 4.5, and I don't know. I love this match a lot. I thought there was a lot of cool moves and counters there. I'm thinking of that destroyer that Hiromu caught Shingo with. There was the sunset bomb to the outside to Shingo. Like you mentioned, I feel like Hiromu was kind of busting out a lot of that high pace, high offense, that kind of reckless abandon moves that he's used to, and so we got a lot of that. Thought Shingo again was great with his selling and bringing in the pumping bombers, and like anytime like Hiromu would kind of pick up speed, Shingo would just like kill him with a big lariat. There was like a Yukon lariat spot like that where he just like crushed Hiromu and like flipped him inside out with the pumping bomber. So yeah, I thought these guys had really good chemistry. I thought it was a great back and forth stuff here, and I never thought that Hiromu was beating Shingo. So for me, that wasn't really an issue. I didn't bite on the time bomb near fall like I did for the Evil match, but I still thought it was a really good matchup and a great closing sequence that eventually Shingo he couldn't put him away with the main Japan pumping bomber. Eventually had to hit him with the last of the dragon. Yeah, I thought it was a great matchup.
Now, I will agree with you. I thought the closing stretch of the match was excellent. And it was so good that that's what kind of convinced me. I wasn't thinking the match was ending. I thought that we were going into like the next phase where I'm like, oh shit, we're turning up finally, for like the last 5 minutes. But yeah, that stuff was all really, really fantastic. Now, you like to throw out the cage match ratings. I will tell you, Grapple has this at 4 flat. So, different strokes for different folks.
Grapple is stingy with the stars.
Man, yeah, and I see cage match throwing out ludicrous stuff all the time too. So
But either way, it's in that 4 to 4.5 range. So watch it, you define for yourself. But either way, it was a great matchup, good semi-main event. That's another thing. It was a semi-main event, so maybe those guys did hold back a little bit and save some bigger stuff for a chance maybe when they're in a main event or a little bit of a bigger stage, because this wasn't like the biggest arena or anything that they were in on this night.
Yeah. Well, that was another thing too. I do feel like as good as that Korakuen crowd was 2 nights prior, I didn't think that this was the best crowd on that night for whatever reason. I felt like they were a little more docile than the crowds the 2 nights prior, so that might have played into it. The other thing too is I started to believe that Hiromu had a dark horse outside shot at being the guy to win the New Japan Cup, because you brought up a great point when you were like, well, he beat Evil, maybe he could be a never openweight title challenger, and that's true. But then I started thinking, like, dude, what's left for him at Junior? There's really nothing left for him to do at this current time. Why couldn't he just be the guy that runs through 2 former IWGP? Once he beat Evil, I was like, okay, now we're off to the races. He could beat anybody, and maybe he could be the guy that loses to Okada. They've already wrestled in the New Japan Cup a couple years prior, so why not let him be the guy? And that be like the true like ascension of Hiromu. And I think they gave him a lot in this tournament, but I did think that maybe he could beat Shingo. I mean, he was rolling everybody up, so why not?
Yeah. I'm kind of glad he didn't win, because the line that they were kind of pushing on commentary with his post-match promo after beating Evil and then leading into this match was that if he won the New Japan Cup, he was going to challenge Desperado for the junior title instead of challenging.
I didn't know that, so I'm kind of glad too, because that would have pissed me off.
Yeah, because post-match, after he beat Evil, there was a point where he looked over at Desperado and had talked about if he wins, he's going to challenge Desperado.
You know what that is? That's like how we always talk about people working their own angles, but he's working against himself on purpose, because he didn't like that's like the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Guys, don't get too excited. I'm not winning this shit because I'm working my own story. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I'm not going really for the junior title. So if I win this shit, I'm challenging for the junior title.
So yeah, I was like, I don't want to see him win and then challenge Despy. So yeah, I'm glad
that lets you know to like temper your expectations. Be like, well, the Bryce, he didn't win, but at least we don't have to have him challenge, waste his challenge on the junior title. So there's that.
Right. But overall, great main event here. Glad Shingo got the win here, which took us to our next quarterfinal matchup here. The main event, Zack Saber Jr., the 2018 New Japan Cup winner. He defeats Will Ospreay here, 23 minutes and 4 seconds via submission.
Yeah, this match blew me away. That was another thing. I liked the previous match, and like you mentioned, it had a lot of cool moves, but I didn't feel like the speed and tempo of the match was what I was expecting from those guys either. Especially considering both of their junior roots, I kind of thought that we might get like a faster paced, high octane sort of match. It was a little more measured, which was good, but this match, Will and Zach, bro, they were going at least for at least 3 or 4 stanzas of the match, mile a minute. Like, they were going so fucking fast, but not just like rushing. They're so in sync with one another. Where like they're doing these highly, highly complex like grapple spots, but they're not like your typical, I don't know how to describe it, but there's certain, classic chain wrestling, near fall pinning combinations that you've seen a million times. For instance, you could think of like, say, a Bret Owen match, and I'm not even talking shit about it, but like, you think of those like segments where they're doing the roll up, 1, 2, 1, 2, or like Steamboat Savage, for instance. And we've seen that a million times, and that stuff's great. That's not what these guys were doing. They were doing next level, higher end British catch style wrestling with like these really complex, like new wave, sort of like escape style grappling maneuvers, but it wasn't grapple fuck. It was like boom, 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 like almost like a Dragon Gate-esque style like speed. And they're in sync with one another the whole time. Like I'm like, did they plan this out, or are they just that in tune with each other? I can't actually tell. And I've got a pretty trained eye for it one way or the other. And that just tells you like these guys are on a different fucking level. And then, not just that, but like it wasn't just all that kind of grappling. Like each guy was having to go into the other guy's game plan. Like you saw Will having to bust out some, you know, high speed strikes and some aerial type maneuvers, and you saw Zach, Zach having to do that, and then you saw Will like really having to go mat based and go grappling oriented, and then both of them were using the other guy's game plan to try to set up their own stuff. Especially Will Ospreay with the strikes and the aerial stuff, and it was just this match ruled. And I mean, it's no surprise in the past 2 years we've seen really, really, really high level matches between both of them that were both like match of the year caliber, contender caliber type matches between them, both here as well as in Red Pro. And this continued to live up to the legacy of classic matches that these guys have had. They knocked it out of the park. They did it again.
Yeah, this was an incredible matchup from the get-go. Like you mentioned, these guys were just wrestling at a breakneck pace, and as soon as the bell rang, that opening sequence where they're exchanging holds and doing the arm drags and big boot at each other until Ospreay powders out. That was just a great way to open up the match, and it was just kind of a one-upsmanship throughout the whole match. There was a cool sequence where Ospreay did his Oz cutter setup on the outside, did the hook kick and did the springboard Oz cutter to the outside to
that was cool.
Saber. That was a cool spot.
Saber didn't take that Oz cutter so great though.
Yeah, and there's a lot of I don't know. Saber just bumps weird. We've talked about it before, especially with like when he takes lariats and clotheslines. But
he does, but for the most part, I think he's gotten better. But that one, he like didn't even like belly bump for it. He like kind of sat out.
It took a stunner. It was like a Oz stunner.
Yeah, except he did like a split legged like stunner. Like he tried. Well, in all fairness, they were kind of in a tight space where they did it.
Yeah. Then after that, Saber got control back again. He got a leg lock in the ropes and was hanging off the apron there and did a lot of damage to Ospreay's knee, which would be a big key in this matchup here.
Well, even prior to that, there was a part where Will had kind of taken over and was working his strikes and really like controlling the pace and tempo and avoiding the ground attack of Zach and everything like that, and kind of just having his way. And there was a point where he went to the top rope, and when he went to the top, he slipped, and he tweaked his knee. And as soon as he tweaked his knee, that was when Zach started going after that leg. And that became the predominant story of the match. Not just, obviously, like you mentioned, it was anything you could do, I could do better. That was part of it. But Zach had a prime target there for, from Will's leg. And then prior to the spot where he got the leg lock on the apron, Will had gone to the top rope because he had Zach laid out on the apron. And he went to the top rope to do a jumping drop kick. And Zach moved out of the way, and he hurt his leg even more at that point. And that's when he really started cinching in all the heel hooks and ankle locks and knee bars and everything like that, which was really cool.
Yeah, and then also loved the kind of strike exchange they had at one point where they were both down, and they were kicking each other in the chest, and then they both sat up and we were slapping the crap out of each other, and then finally stood up and we were just exchanging strikes. That was a great sequence there.
Yeah, I have a rule for my wrestling watching where it's like, you can watch a match and think it's really great, but like, I think sometimes we'll be like, that was really great because, it went a certain length, they did certain things, you kind of understand the tempo and the pace, but maybe you didn't personally enjoy it. But like matches that get me being like, holy fuck, like, yeah, and like really popping me audibly loud in like, and get me like up and excited and like bring that sort of energy. That's the stuff that I'm really gonna like go higher on, and that's what this match was doing. Like there was so much stuff. I mean, Will was incredible in this match. Zach was too, but man, both these guys.
Yeah, this is an absolute incredible matchup. Towards the end here, Saber or Ospreay's going for the Stormbreaker. Saber slips behind, gets like a sleeper-like maneuver, slips down, also traps that injured leg, so it's like bent at an awkward angle. He has that trapped also with like a sleeper choke submission hole, and Ospreay taps out. And there was some controversy with the finish because Ospreay and all the United Empire, they were claiming that Ospreay didn't tap out, that he was trying to just get his knee out, pull his knee out or escape his knee out from Saber's submission. But to me, it seemed like clearly he tapped out.
So to answer the part about what that maneuver was from a technical standpoint, that's a calf slicer.
Mm.
If you think so, obviously he's behind him, right? And the back of his shin is going into the small of the knee / calf of Will, and then he's pulling Will into him. His shin is going into the calf. That's a calf slicer. That's the same move that we see Yo and AJ Styles use, the calf killer. They're applying it from a different angle and a different way. But if you think about the mechanics of it, just for like half a second, it is the same thing.
Yeah, I'm picturing it now again. Yeah, that makes total sense. So yeah, doing that calf killer there, getting the submission win. Well, Ospreay, arguing with Red Shoes and Kevin Kelly, saying that he didn't tap out. It wasn't a tap.
Now it wasn't applied the way a traditional true calf slicer from that position would be, but that makes sense because it's worked maneuver. So he kind of position it kind of in a safer place where I don't think it would do too much. The one thing though is you want to make sure whoever you're giving that to is pretty mobile either way, because I mean, you think about how tight someone's hamstrings might be mid-match, pulling them back regardless of whether you're actually applying pressure, that could really strain something if the person's not like truly mobily fit. Luckily, I think Will should be good to go. But and then not only that, but he's also applying a choke on top of it. So it's not just typical, it's not just your traditional calf slicer, but he's kind of got, multiple submissions applied simultaneously, which is, that's Zack Saber's MO. As far as the finish goes, my take, it looked to me like Zack Saber or like Will Ospreay was doing, like he was tapping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even if he wasn't, like let's say, doing the whole like holding his hand up, and really thinking about it, and then going da 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 and doing the motion. I mean, for anybody that's watched wrestling for years, there was a long period of time where guys didn't tap out in pro wrestling. I mean, in Japan they did, but all over the world they either did the yes, yes, yes. They like shook their head,
Right.
or they would take their hand and wave it, to let the person know I want out of this. And that's what it looked like Will was doing to me. It looked like he was, audibly and verbally submitting. Either way, there is another part of this where even if Will wasn't necessarily tapping per se, his leg had taken a lot of damage in the match. And, in real combat sports, referees have the autonomy to end a match if they deem the person unable to protect themselves and they're in true danger, and that's called a referee stoppage. There is some precedent for it in New Japan. If you think back a few years back to the New Beginning when Tanahashi was the white belt champion and he was defending it against Suzuki, he was in a heel hook for so long that he couldn't get out, and Red Shoes called the match. I don't know if you recall that, Jeremy, but that happened.
Yeah, I do remember
he didn't
that.
tap out. We've seen times where guys have been now a chokehold is obviously a little different, but we've seen guys in the Okada. What's Okada's finishing move called again?
The money clip.
Yeah, we've seen like Shingo and Hiromu in the money clip and not tap out and get ref stoppages. Now, do I think that hypothetically, like Ospreay might not have been in this maneuver long enough to believably, from a kayfabe standpoint, warrant a ref stoppage. There could be an argument for that, for sure. At the same time, there was a lot of criticism in the previous match during the Sonata match that like Red Shoes didn't stop the match soon enough, and Will was involved with that match. So, there might be something to that element of storytelling where they decided, hey, people didn't like that he didn't call it off soon enough last time. Let's call it off sooner in this match and, add that little bit of wrinkle to what's going on. Either way, it still looked like he was tapping. Even if he didn't quote unquote intend to, he was still tapping nonetheless. And, you can't like fake tap in pro wrestling and then like be expected to be given the pass. So, was there some not conspiracy, but was there, I don't know, like what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a bad judgment call.
I wouldn't even call it that, but like, was a controversy. Was there some controversy here? Sure. Could that lead to something in the story down the line? Possibly, this might be a way to kind of protect Ospreay for, whatever they're going to do with him down the line. That might be part of it too. But and I will say this, I didn't really love the finish. For my money, I thought it was like a little abrupt, and I didn't like that it was a little bit like, I wouldn't call it flat out fuck finish, but it wasn't completely clean. But I get it. Like, Will's their boy. He's one of the top heels. They're trying to protect him. I think that this was a protected finish in a certain sense. So, but I still love the match. I'm somewhere between 4.5 and 4 3/4. I thought it was one of the best matches in New Japan this year, and I probably think that this is the match of the tournament so far.
Yeah, I went 4 3/4 on it. I liked their New Japan Cup match last year a little better than I went 5 stars on. So I just went, the Cowards rating here with this one. The point that you mentioned, Kevin Kelly brought that up on commentary, also talking about Red Shoes ending the first match of Sonata not fast enough, and then talking about how it possibly could have ended it too soon here. But I'm in agreement with you. I felt like it looked like Ospreay straight up tapped out, and I kind of liked how abrupt the finish was, because normally with those guys you get more of a crazier finishing sequence, and I feel like Ospreay's kind of had Zach's number the last couple times. So, yeah, and Zach has proven obviously if he catches you with a hold, no matter what the hold is, he can beat you. So with him working on that, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. What I was gonna say is it's not that I didn't like that he got caught and then that he quit abruptly. What I didn't like was that there wasn't a definitive nature to the finish.
Yeah, they were trying to add some doubt that he didn't actually.
Yeah, I didn't think that was necessary, but maybe we can quote unquote let it play out. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, so big win for Saber here, and also throughout this match he was talking in Japanese, and then in the post match promo he said some Japanese lines. Then he talked about wanting to. He won the 2018 Cup, but that's not good enough, and he wants to win this year's Cup. He just beat last year's tournament winner, and he wants to win the world title. So Saber getting the win here, big rematch against Shingo in the semifinals.
With Saber, the last time he really got a push like this was that 2018 New Japan Cup, and then since then he's definitely been in the mix and done some things, but probably the highlight of his run in New Japan since then has been his work in the Dangerous Tekkers with Taichi. And since that group is kind of put on hold for the time being, if you notice, he's really invested in his weight training. He's added bulk. He's added definition. He's really upped his submission game, as crazy as that sounds. I've noticed him just doing a lot more that he never has done in the past. So he's still learning and a student of the game. And, I think there's a little bit of Randy Ortonism there. Anytime Orton is getting ready for a big push, possible title run, he gets himself in prime shape. I think that's what we're seeing with Zach right now. And I'm not saying for sure Zach's going to be champion or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point if he is the guy that wins the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the big wins that he's been getting and the role that he's on. And then, again, if you look at the Shingo-Saber rivalry, so Saber got the win, the G1. Shingo got the win back at Power Struggle and title defense. So if they do go with that New Japan booking on the 50-50, it could be Saber's turn here again to get the win back on Shingo.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say, we got a question here, but before that, Zach and Taichi both need to talk to their gear makers, and they need to get a larger pair of trunks, both of them. Okay, because they both beefed up, which is all fine and good, but like showing a lot of ass. Okay. Okay, and this is not that kind of promotion. This is an upstanding sportsmanship, promotion. We don't need all that.
This ain't DDT.
We don't need all that. This is not DDT.
So it's a question here from Let's Commission 7252 says, after years of pushing him, you guys say that it's a bad decision to have Zack Sabre Jr. win the cup for a second time, but this time win the world title?
I'm a little confused by this question. I don't know if maybe there's a typo. He said he's claiming that we said it's a bad decision for Zack to win again.
Or maybe that can do we think it's a bad decision?
Because I don't recall ever having said that. I do think we might have said that he was an unlikely winner, although I don't think I've ever outright ruled that out. You know what I'm saying? So maybe that is, yeah. So I'll just assume that what he's saying is, do we think it's a bad idea? But if he did win, would he need to win the world title? Because there is that conundrum. If he's a two-time winner, but he comes up short, what does that really do for him? You know what I mean? We've
puts him in starts to put him in Goto level.
Yeah, well, yeah, in the New Japan Cup, yes. Another recent, comparison could be like Ibushi. You remember, it was a while before, Ibushi was winning G1s, but he wasn't winning the title.
Right.
So there's that like conundrum there. I think it would be. Here's the deal. At this point, I think Zack or Shingo are winning the tournament. I don't think that the winner is beating Okada. Period. So you're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation either way. And so you kind of just have to, as a booker and as a fan, you kind of got to put yourself in the booker position. If you're trying to figure out what they're going to do and think about the business side of it, and kind of figure who do you think would be the best choice for a April title defense. Where are they? They're in Sumo Hall?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. They're either in Budokan or they're in Ryogoku, one or the other. Should it be Zack getting the title shot and then losing and kind of getting the re-elevation? Or, there's the story. Shingo had that incredible run last year. He was the runner-up. You give him the win this year, but then he loses to Okada again just after having lost him in the Dome back in January. So, which is the lesser of two evils? Which is better for the company? Which is better for the performers? I don't know. I guess that's in the hands of Gato. But I think I'm leaning towards the Zack Sabre argument, honestly.
Yeah, so the big April show is April 9th in Ryogoku Hybrid Battle.
Awesome.
So yeah, I could definitely see doing a Saber Okada match there, doing a big title event. I don't know if having Saber win is the right call. I mean, I feel like he has been like leaning into becoming almost in that Kenny Omega role where he's learning the language, he's living there, he's becoming this like fan favorite gaijin, and so there could be potential they want to capitalize on that and kind of push him and give him the belt, but I still feel like Okada's going to hold the belt for a majority of this year.
Yeah, and I mean, certain guys, like, obviously ahead of him in the pecking order when it comes to gaijin talent, you got Jay White, you got Will Ospreay above him, for sure. Maybe, possibly Cobb, but definitely those two, But at the same time, look at how infrequently both Will Ospreay and Jay White have been in the country. During that same period of time, Zack's never left. And he's been really endearing himself to the country and to the audience by learning the language, by forming that incredible tag team with Taichi, and just all the antics on the post-match and in the press and in the media. everything like that. And I think that you kind of see that really coming through in how the audience is getting behind him during these matches. And it's because he's been there. And I think that, like you said, I think that that's a key thing to his push. It's not just that he's this virtuoso wrestler, and this dynamic, mic guy, but I think it's the fact that he has ingrained himself into the culture as well, and that that might be the leg up him, all the time he's been in the country, that and everything else, moving there in the language, that might give him the leg up potentially down the road over, say, those other three guys when it comes to being the top gaijin.
Yeah. So that's gonna take us now.
Now's the time.
Yeah, if they're gonna, I think definitely like go ahead and push him now. But I don't know if winning the world title in April is the right call. Maybe it might be, and maybe you have Okada win the title back later in the year. But
bro, now listen, like the thing that everyone's expecting is Okada to just go through. But like, if they were to put the title on one of these three guys, but more specifically Zack, because Zack's never won the belt before, I would really freak out. Like, that would be a bold move by New Japan's part. Like, that could be something really exciting. If it'd be like, fuck,
yeah,
they had him beat Okada.
I feel like that'd be a pretty buzzworthy, buzzworthy like, move to do. And also too, if Naito does beat Okada, I think that can add a story of where Naito thinks he's going to get his redemption and get a title shot by beating Okada, but then Okada loses the belt, and so the Naito has to dig deeper to get a title shot.
One thing too, we're almost done with this review. We've had so few actual questions about this tournament. Normally at this point, we get a lot of questions every episode, about what our favorite match was, what our predictions were, yada, yada, yada. And we've gotten like almost none of that. I don't know if like something happened in the algorithm this week, but that kind of tells me that maybe while in the middle of New Japan doing a really, really exciting quarterfinals, people have kind of tuned out because of how maybe less than the first three, rounds of the tournament actually were.
Yeah, I've been seeing like no buzz or hype for this tournament on Twitter. I mean, the diehards are tweeting about it, but I haven't seen a ton of people talking about it. Like, yeah, our questions the last few weeks have been dwindled down. Like this week, there was like barely any questions.
Yeah, I'm like, what? And this is the most exciting time of the tournament. So it's like, and we could be like the hip podcast, be like, you idiots, you're missing out. But like, I get it. If you were just going off of the Golden Series and just going off the first three rounds of New Japan Cup, and then you expect, it's almost like you're in a bad relationship, and the person's gonna walk out, and right before they walk out, you try to like be on your best behavior, and it's like, is it? You should have done that a few months ago,
Right.
That's kind of what it feels like. It's like, oh, now you guys want to give me, Hiromu and Shingo.
Right. And then also too, I think another thing that could have hurt too was just that crazy stretch of shows that you had. You had
so many.
You had like the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 17th, 18th, 20th, 21st. There's this huge streak of back-to-back shows. So even if you were interested, you pretty much had to watch it every day if you didn't want to fall behind or get spoiled. So it was just kind of hard to keep up with towards that middle part there.
Yeah, even the announcement of the Best of the Super Juniors has me nervous because like I've been cherry picking these shows, and I'm like, damn, dude, they're gonna be doing like 5-6 matches a night for a month and a half, 2 months. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was good because kind of like watch these undercards and fast forward, kind of skip through the finishes and then focus on the tournament matches. But yeah, having more tournament matches is gonna be a little bit tougher.
Well, let's get into the final night, night 14. This is the semifinals, March 26th. The show's going to be opening up with a team of God and 6 or 9, and Hiroshi Tanahashi taking on the Bull Club team of Fale, Owens, Phantasmo, Gato, and Ishimori. We have the Chaos team of Ishii and Yano teaming up with Togi Makabe to take on Suzuki-gun team of Suzuki, Taichi, and Kanemaru. Third match of the night, Doki, Desperado, and Taka Michinoku of Suzuki-gun take on Evil, Sho, and Yujiro Takahashi of the House of Torture. Fourth match of the night, we have Goto, Tiger Mask, and Honma taking on the Strong Hearts, Shima, El Lindemann, and T-Hawk. So I think that's one everyone's kind of, going to pay attention to for sure. Fifth match of the night, the cast team of Yo and Yoshihashi take on the Great Okan and Jeff Cobb of United Empire. Sixth match of the night, we have Bushi and Hiromu of LIJ taking on Hanare and Will Ospreay of United Empire. So Hiromu, Will Ospreay on opposite sides. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then the main event and semi-main event, we have semifinal match action as Shingo takes on Zack Sabre Jr. And the winner of that will take on the winner of Tetsuya Naito and Kazuchika Okada. So before we get into the semifinal matches, Jeremy, any thoughts on anything on the undercard there real quick?
Well, I think in the Yo and Yoshihashi versus Okan and Cobb, it seems like it might be clear that Okan and Cobb's going to be the unit they go for with the tag title match. And obviously, Yo eat the pin there, and then it looks like we'll get Okan and Cobb versus Bishamon at Hyper Battle.
Agreed.
We still have, teasing of the junior tag title match with that multi-man in the opener with GOD teaming up with 609 and Tanahashi against Bullet Club. So that story is continuing there. Let's see, the Chaos Suzuki-gun match. Doesn't seem to be any storyline elements there.
Well, there's the I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
the match after that though, they got Desperado and Sho on opposite sides.
Right, so that seems to be a clear Hyper Battle title match. Strong Hearts in action, that should be fun. Hopefully, we'll see those guys continue on after this tournament. And then, like you mentioned, Ospreay and Hiromu opposite sides. That'll be fun to see. Haven't seen that in a while. So there should be some good stuff on this undercard.
Yeah, I know one thing that's interesting is, we've got Ospreay taking on Minoru Suzuki for the British title in the near future, but none of that really came into any sort of play during this tour whatsoever. On the opposite side of that, I do think that potentially, regardless of whether Zack wins New Japan Cup or not, coming off that match with Will Ospreay, I think one reason they might have been doing the questionable finish is potentially running Zack and Ospreay back against one another for the British title, whether that be here or in Rev Pro down the line as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I thought about. Them definitely doing another Rev Pro title match at some point.
Yeah, especially since that's who Will Ospreay took the title off of originally anyways.
Right, and especially if they do, Ospreay's held that belt for a while now. If you wanted somebody to beat him, I think Saber's a good guy that can beat him if they wanted to flip the belt to another guy that can draw and be bigger. But I still know if Saber wants to be going back and forth to the UK like that.
Well, Zack's the most prolific and most widely known associated champion in Rev Pro's history. So
right,
I think he's like a 3-time champion and held it more days and more defenses than anybody else in history. So
yeah, so definitely they could go with him or just have Ospreay kind of get that big win over him. And just continue to build Ospreay, potentially for maybe a guy like Ricky Knight Jr. to beat in the future.
All right, awesome. So we've done quite a bit of discussion here, but I'll just give you my quick predictions and thoughts. Very excited about the finals. You got 4 mega superstars in very compelling rematches going into the finals, which I think is smart because they're not, at this point, throwing any of these matches away. They're matches that we've seen in the recent past, but there's still a lot of steam and heat behind them. And my opinion, I think Okada's losing to Naito. Now, if Okada were to beat Naito, I actually think it makes the most sense for Okada to win the entire New Japan Cup. Now, they've never done that before. Very rarely have they ever had the champion, if ever. I can't remember if we decided if the champion had ever been in it before or not. But regardless, if you were ever going to do a year where the champion wins it, the 50th anniversary with Okada being that man would make sense. And then at that point, you could potentially set up, like we've discussed, like say the Ibushi title defense or some other major title defense. Who knows? Something crazy could happen. Kenny Omega walks out. But I think the more likely scenario is Naito's going to beat Okada, and then at that point, I think it makes the most sense for Naito to lose because typically, the runner-up gets the May title defense, and if Naito actually beat the champion and then loses in the final, he still has a claim over the champion regardless. And so if he were to win the tournament, you're only getting the one title challenger. But if he loses the tournament, you get the tournament winner in April and then Naito in May. So you've set up two title defenses that both have, fan interest behind them. So from a business perspective, that just makes the most sense to me. And I don't think you can go wrong with Shingo or Zack, against Naito as the final. Naito and Shingo, stablemates. They've only wrestled one time in New Japan, and it was a match that people loved during that G1, but maybe got seen by lesser people because it was during sort of a random G1 night, even though, it was still a match of the year contender that year and had 5 stars, 4 3/4 stars, something crazy like that. I don't know. And this would be the biggest platform they've ever done it on. It seems they've been holding it off. So you could definitely do that. But Naito and Zack have a long-standing history, especially in this tournament specifically. And Zack has always kind of had Naito's number. And I think Zack beating Naito in the finals is the thing that makes the most sense to me. I think Zack can handle a loss from Okada more than Shingo can at this point. And I think the elevation of him winning the tournament does more for him at this point than it does for Shingo, who's already held the world title and also wrestled in the Dome against Okada recently. So my prediction, Naito's going to beat Okada, and Zack is going to beat Shingo, which I'm most looking forward to the match between Shingo and Zack, considering how fantastic their 2-match series was last year. So this is almost like the rubber match. And then in the finals, Zack wins, setting up the April title defense between him and Okada, which we saw back in 2018, and this is 4 years later. So, is that right? Is that 4 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's also a fantastic story as well. Like Zack's back after all these years against the same man he was unable to defeat before. Can he? And he has beat him since then. Can he do it again? That's what I think is going to play out. That's my prediction, and that's where I think we're going.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same line as you. I don't think, I'll see, like you mentioned, if Okada's going to win it, this is the year to do it. I just don't see a title challenger really lined up for him for April. You could do the Ibushi thing, but it's like, all right, he wasn't cleared for the cup now. He's ready now, and you're going to do that match. I just don't know. I don't know what's up with Ibushi. I don't know if he's actually ready or not. So I just don't think that's going to happen. And then I can't think of anybody else, even if they're able to bring somebody in. I guess they could bring in an outsider, but I don't know if they're going to have the clearance just yet for the April show. So I have a hard time seeing who can actually be the challenger. Also going to get some guy from Blade or Dragon Gate or Noah or whoever to challenge. So I think it makes a lot more sense to just go with having Naito beat him, so Naito could be the May challenger, and then having either Shingo or Saber beat Naito to be the Hyper Battle challenge. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Saber winning here. I feel like him beating Ospreay. I think that's even though they've had a back and forth rivalry, I think that's a kind of big win there. And then I think of him getting another win on Shingo would be a big deal, following up that Ospreay momentum, and then getting him into that tournament final here.
Now, I know Zack beat a young lion on the way to the top, and then I forget. Oh, and then he beat Doki. So neither of those were, very prolific victories. But you take a look at the last 3 guys he would have beaten to get to the finals. And I mean, Okan, Shingo, and Will Ospreay. I mean, that's a pretty impressive like resume of guys to beat. And then finally Naito, like those four guys back to back to back. That would definitely be something huge for him, if that were to be the case.
Yeah.
But in either case, we're getting the semifinals on March 26th, and then the finals are the next night on March 27th. So by the time we record next week, this will have already played out, and we will be correct.
Always ahead.
Except for my entire bracket, which was like literally perfect almost, and then got busted like in the course of just like one night, got destroyed.
Yeah, so then the finals will be the next night, like you mentioned, Sunday, March 27th. Both of these shows in Osaka Joe Hall. So
Wow.
big show field here for both these nights, and yeah, really looking forward to whatever the finals are going to be. And yeah, that's going to wrap up New Japan Cup coverage for this week. And next week we'll be back to review the semifinals and the finals.
Nice. So we got some a bit of news here. So first thing, John Moxley versus Will Ospreay is official for NJPW's Windy City Riot event next month, and that event is going to be airing on pay-per-view on Fight TV, and then probably within 48 hours be aired on New Japan World on delay, as has been the case with some of their specials. Very excited for this one. I saw the promos from Moxley and Will Ospreay, and I thought both guys did a really good job. Especially Will. Like Will did such a compelling job burying John to where the point where like he got me thinking like, is John Moxley actually a good guy? Maybe he is a dickhead. Like I don't know.
Yeah, they both had good back and forth promos. Ospreay was just wanted Moxley to say his name, and because Moxley's been talking about wanting to wrestle the top guys in New Japan, has not mentioned Ospreay, and so yeah, Ospreay really wanted Moxley to say his name, and then Moxley finally responded, and yeah, Ospreay cut that killer promo and talking about, oh, you thought we were mates because we went drinking one night, and just like went into
because they had Korean barbecue.
Yeah, and I just went into this whole thing like how like Moxley like disrespected his apartment, and yeah, so some fire promos. It should be a great matchup. I thought a big matchup to do on this New Japan of America show. So it should be a big deal. Should get some buys. It is going to be, like you mentioned, on Fight TV, $19.99, and then an archive version will be airing on New Japan World. They're not doing the live Japanese feed like they've done in the past for these shows. So it's all going to be on Fight, and then later on New Japan World.
Well, it makes sense. I was listening to WrestleNomics. They're talking about how like Fight TV operates at like an $8 million a year like deficit. So, yeah, I like that they said at a later date, but they're not saying the date. But like every time it's been 48 hours, so like if it's not 48 hours, I'd be very like surprised,
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that John Moxley's like, I thought we were friends, bro. We had Korean barbecue together. Next bit of news, Best of the Super Juniors tournament is returning to its traditional spot on the NJPW calendar. New Japan announced that Best Super Juniors 29 will begin in Aichi Sunday, May 15th, my birthday. Tournament will conclude in Tokyo on Friday, June 3rd. We did get a question here from @Seal3Hey. He said, who do you think we could see in BOSJ this year now that it will be in its normal spot on the calendar?
Well, I guess, there's still some questions that need to be answered. One, is it going to be single block or back to the normal 2 block? And also, are we going to be able to get foreigners in for this tournament? If we want to work under the assumption that we can get foreigners in for the tournament, I think bringing in guys like Chris Bay, TJP, Clark Connors, he's mentioned he wants to be in Super Junior to win the junior title. Guys like that, Dragon Lee, I think he.
No, I want Dragon Lee, but I'm concerned about his association with AAA. But at the same time, like, it seemed like New Japan was willing to work with him in the past, even though I think even back then he was kind of maybe kind of quasi doing stuff with AAA. So that one he might get the pass, but there are other guys out there, like for instance, like Laredo Kid and like Vikingo, who I would like fucking kill to have in this tournament. I don't think they could ever be in it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who else. I mean, obviously, from a domestic standpoint, the Strong Hearts could all be in it. You can get T-Hawk and Lindemann in there.
Yeah, I don't have any names, just kind of the names that you threw out there. I mean, there's definitely guys like that have worked for Strong or for Impact or even, who knows what's going to happen with the ROH AEW thing going forward. That might open some doors as well. So, but if there was a name out there that I think needs to come in, probably wants to come in, hasn't been able to, and people would freak out, it's probably Dragon Lee.
Yeah, that probably like the biggest pop there, and he's been always tweeting. He keeps tweeting that he misses New Japan and he wants to get back. So, at one point he did have like a separate contract with just New Japan, and that kind of went into the pandemic. So I don't know what the status of his contract is, if that got rolled over, if they're planning on signing a new one. But hopefully he will be in Best Super Juniors.
2 new matches have been announced for NJPW Strong Lone Star Shootout on Friday, April 1st. In a singles bout, Jonah will be taking on Blake Christian. The other new match is going to be Strong Openweight Champion Filthy Tom Lawler. He'll team up with Royce Isaacs and Jared Kratos to take on Fred Rosser, Alex Coughlin, and the DKC. The newly announced matches will not air as part of the Fight TV Live pay-per-view on April 1st, but they will be taped to air at a later date on NJPW Strong. NJPW Strong Lone Star Shootout, April 1st, 5 p.m. Central Time. So far, we have the matches of Jay White versus Speedball Mike Bailey, Killer Cross versus Minoru Suzuki, Ishii versus Dickinson, Rocky Romero versus Ren Narita, Finn Juice and Daniel Garcia, and Kevin Knight versus Mascara Dorada, Carl Fredericks, Clark Connors, and Yuya Uemura, and then the exclusive Strong matches I just listed previously.
Mascara Dorada, that's another name there that could be brought in.
Oh, yeah, and he was fantastic on the TJP's another name too, so we'll see. And then on April 16th, the previously announced NJPW All Japan Pro Wrestling Cork and Hall 60th Birthday Festival will be airing, and we have a list of matches that have been announced for the show. We have the matches between Ryo Inoue versus Kosei Fujita, Toriano and Tajiri versus Black Mensa Ray and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. We have a match between Takao Omori, Ryohei Oiwa, and Yuto Nakashima versus Yoshitatsu, Ryuzuki Taguchi, and Master Wato. Another match between Yuma Aoyagi, Atsuki Aoyagi, Togi Makabe, and Tomoaki Hanma as they take on the team of Naito, Bushi, Shingo, and Hiromu. Semi-main event, we have Suwama, Shitaro Oshino, and Dan Tamura versus Hiroki Goto, Yoshihashi, and Yo. And then the main event is tag team action, dream match as Kento Miyahara and Hiroshi Tanahashi, Team Ace, take on the team of Jake Lee and Sonata. That is assuming Sonata is able to go at that point, considering the eye injury.
Yeah, he might need to, put a mask on, the protective mask, if he wants to compete. But yeah, there's a possibility he might not make it. They might need to switch some things up. But I mean, overall, kind of similar to what we saw with the Noah card, a lot of tag matches, guys with history and previous partnerships. But it should be a fun show.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing, obviously, the main event, Kento Miyahara and Tanahashi teaming together. That's a dream tag team. And Jake Lee Sonata, that one sounds pretty good as well. So we'll see how that plays out. But, definitely want to check that out when it occurs. And then we have just a couple questions, the recommended match of the week, and we're going to get out of here. So first question from Les Commission 7252. They asked, can you say that the feud between Doki and Kevin Kelly is better than the GOD versus Bullet Club feud?
No, I can't say that. I mean, Doki has.
What's Doki been doing? He's just been banging the
pipe
near his desk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't even given that much thought, honestly.
Yeah, I would say, also, like we talked about earlier, the God and Bullet Club feud's been pretty hot so far.
I don't think it's as good of a feud as the ongoing feud that Bad Luck Fale had with every ring announcer ever.
Yeah.
His second question, he said, from any match in the pandemic era of New Japan, 2020 to 2022, Jeremy, what match would you have commentated with Kevin Kelly? And Josh, what match would you have commentated with Chris Charlton?
Hmm. I feel
See,
like it
I
should.
think he's got this a little backwards.
Russ will say, I think it should be the other way around. Like, you should be with Kevin, and I should be with Chris.
Yeah, I'm a color guy, and Jeremy's play-by-play or
Uh,
lead, either way.
let's see. What match would I want to call?
I can tell you what match I would call. It's pretty easy.
What?
I mean, there's a lot of great matches, and I'm not saying that this is the best one, but if I could have called any match live and been there and really enjoyed it, it would have been that New Japan Cup match from a couple years ago between Minoru Suzuki and Yuji Nagata.
Mm.
Yeah, I loved that match. I loved the story and the physicality, and then the surprise win of Yuji Nagata. Spoiler alert. So I mean, if yeah, I've never really commentated wrestling. I don't think I would be very good at it, but if I did, that'd probably be the one I'd want to do.
I would want to do the Shingo versus Tanahashi never title match from New Beginning in Nagoya last year.
That's a good pick.
I love that match so much.
Deep cuts, deep cuts. All right. Well, like questions week. So, for those of you that are listening, anybody's listening, get those questions in, helps us out. But we're going to kick it over to the recommended match of the week. So last week, I recommended the match between Scott Hall versus Keiji Muto from 2001 for the Triple Crown title. Jeremy, you checked out this match. What'd you think?
Yeah, interesting matchup. It's just, two names you don't really expect to see. They were building it as a dream match, and I'm not sure who dreamed of Scott Hall versus Muto, but definitely very interesting. I definitely think this match was more about the kind of the star power and aura of both guys versus the actual moves or the actual match. Muto, big entrance, big presentation, big ring entrances for both guys. Of course, Scott Hall does the traditional throw a toothpick in the opponent's body. But overall,
I liked that Muto grabbed the toothpick, smelled it, and then acted disgusted. So,
yeah.
Scott Hall having tooth decay is something I can totally believe.
But yeah, the match, I would say opening the match, it was kind of a slow pace, a very feeling out process. Guys kind of exchanging holds and trying to kind of figure out the game plan. And towards the end of the match, it picked up more with, Scott Hall. He was pretty much, the Gaijin that was getting heat on the, hero babyface in Muto. And so he was getting heat on Muto, got hit the big fall away slam. There was a big top rope backdrop at one point in the matchup. And then Muto was kind of fighting from underneath until he could make the comeback. He was, fighting for the Shining Wizard. There was one where he missed, but eventually he caught the Shining Wizard in the corner to Scott Hall. He went for the Muto moonsault, missed that. But then eventually he was able to get the Shining Wizard on Scott Hall, who did a great sell for both of the Shining Wizards. And yeah, overall a fun matchup. Also, I wouldn't say this is a classic or any kind of great matchup, but it's just one of those things where it's just something you would think would have actually have happened. And but yeah, I felt like it was just kind of your two pro wrestlers doing a pro wrestling match, if you know what I mean. And
right,
it was executed perfectly. They told a great story, and they did what they could for those guys at that time.
Yeah, a few things with that. And I totally agree with you when you say it was two pros going out there and having a great pro style match. That's exactly what they did. This wasn't your hard hitting all Japan strong style sort of, Kings Road classic. It was nothing like that. This was not a display of Purezu or classic catch as catch, but it was a really good display of like mid 90s, like, North American heavyweight, professional wrestling, where guys go out there and they just, they're telling a story and they work body parts and they, hit the big moves and they, it's a competent match. But what I think was interesting about it is like, hey, this is in 2001. So like just thinking of the time frame, seeing these two guys like in the ring together and everything like that, and like Muto's the champion and Hall's the challenger, and I'm like, what else was going on in wrestling in 2001 when this was happening?
Right.
It's like the Rock is a thing. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a thing. Biker Taker is running rampant. WCW has closed. Shane McMahon is the name on the contract is McMahon, but it's not Vince. This stuff is all happening in real time, like at the same time. So that part of it's like really interesting. But the other thing too is like Scott, probably even more so than Muda, is like really, really broken down. And he goes out there and takes a lot of fucking bumps for Muto. And like, I can't think of any other time post 1996 that I can think of Scott Hall doing a match like this.
Yeah, I didn't kind of catch it. Yeah, Scott was like bumping a lot for him and just really selling for him.
Yeah, it's kind of unexpected, I mean, I guess given the fact that it's a big main event against a legend like Muto, and these guys do have history going back to the NWA, when they wrestled with one another, in Crockett and everything like that. But I don't know. Like, you just think about everything that like Scott did in WCW prior to this, and it's like, yeah, all of his great matches were either going to be plunder matches, ladder matches, or multi-man tags. I can't think of a single straight up like just one-on-one, straight up match that he had with anybody in WCW where they just went out there and had a competent, good wrestling match like this. Like, I don't think that exists.
Yeah.
Or at least not on this level. So, I mean, to see him kind of go out there and pay the respect and do the job for Muto and really put in the effort, I think it's kind of an anomaly in that respect. And considering that it's 2001 and it's Scott Hall and Keiji Muto, this could have sucked. And it doesn't suck. In fact, like, for me, I thought the match kind of ruled in a certain respect. I wouldn't like overhype it. I'm probably like, I don't know, 3.5 on it, but I think like they worked really hard for that 3.5.
Yeah, they did. So yeah, it was definitely a cool match to check out.
Yeah, if you've never seen it, you want to see Scott Hall in Japan, which again, he spent, he wrestled over 300 matches, did multiple tours, 3 decades. This might be one to check out.
Yeah. So we're actually going to be doing a little format change for the recommended match of the week going forward.
Here's my only thing. Okay. I like recommended match of the week. The format change was my idea, but my only concern is like, what if people really like the recommended match of the week and they're like, oh, no, we don't want you to do, we don't want you to change.
Okay.
That's my concern. But at the same time, like, I feel like the format change might be, maybe people would like it better, or maybe it would help you and I better. Like, I don't know. Let's do this. This is what I'm going to propose on the air. Let's do the format change for 1 week. And for those that are listening after they hear this, let's throw out a poll, maybe midweek, this coming week, and see what they think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
See what the listeners think. And or we could do it after next week. We could do the format change this week, and then after we've done it, ask the audience and see what they say. So, without further ado, Jeremy, what are we thinking of changing?
So we're thinking about changing this into an excursion match of the week to check out. As you all know, in our year-end awards, we have an excursion match of the year list where we find the best matches of the year that features New Japan wrestlers who wrestled outside of New Japan. And that is a very extensive process because we're trying to literally watch everything, anywhere that a New Japan guy goes, and especially now with New Japan
Oh my
Strong. Those and a lot of independent guys, that has kind of widened the field on who's eligible for that category. So we thought it would be a great
Right.
way to A, keep up on some of these matches, and then B, to help you guys find these matches, because that is like the one category that we've left where it's not required to fill in, because we've had a lot of people say, oh, well, we haven't watched all this stuff. So there are some people who abstain from voting in that category because they feel like they haven't done a good job keeping up. But if we start,
Well, the thing I like about the idea of excursion match of the week, well, like you mentioned, yes, it would help you and I, to basically like be able to watch this stuff in real time and kind of keep track of it, more so than we have in the past. Especially with how difficult that's becoming for the reasons you stated. But at the same time, like for the listeners, for those who maybe want to keep up, instead of us just throwing it on them at the end of the year, we could say, hey, I watched XYZ match from Defy or from IWTV or Rev Pro or AEW or CMLL, whatever. And then we can tell them whether we think it was one worth checking out for them or not. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so I think that is a cool aspect of it. It's like, yeah, this Wheeler Utah, dark match probably wasn't worth it was, it's probably not worth checking out. Or be like, holy fuck,
Yeah.
Doki and Taichi, you guys got to see this match. So that's kind of the appeal of it. But on the flip side, recommended match of the week, I like digging into the archives and finding gems and being able to tell people about it. But, we don't hear much feedback about it. So I don't even know if anyone's actually getting anything out of it. If this is the part of the show where people, usually tune out, or if this is something where people are like, oh, you want to get rid of the recommended match? I keep up with that every week. Like, I don't know,
Yeah, so I guess we'll find out. My pick this week shouldn't be too far of a stretch from what we normally do. So the recommended match, that's excursion match for this week, it is on New Japan World. It is from Impact Sacrifice from March 5th. It is a Switchblade Jay White versus one half of the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley. I did watch this match this past week. I thought it was a really good matchup here. Also, there's a ton of history, a ton of New Japan history with Jay White and Shelley, and some Ring of Honor history as well with the Search and Destroy group. And so yeah, this was a really good matchup between these guys, and I think it's a match people should check out. And depending on how excursion matches line up, could be something that's considered as a nominee.
Yeah, well, I will definitely give that a watch this week, and then kind of give my take on it, and then we'll go from there.
Nice. So again, that is on New Japan World, Jay White versus Alex Shelley, and that is going to wrap things up for us here this week on the show. Next week we'll be back to review the semifinals and finals of the New Japan Cup. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider making a donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. Make sure you connect with us on social media. On Twitter, the show is at KI Strong Style. You can follow the network at Social Suplex. Follow me at Jeremy L. Donovan. On Facebook, we are facebook.com/Social Suplex. You can also find us in the Facebook group Wrestling Squared Circle, facebook.com/group/Wrestling Squared Circle. On Instagram, we're at Social Suplex. On Reddit, I'm the Pro Black Guy, just Keeping It Strong Style. You can email me, Jeremy, at socialsuplex.com. And check out all the other shows that we have here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We have One Nation Radio, hosted by Rich Latta and James Boyd. The Grave Consequences Podcast, hosted by Caleb and Maserati. All Things Elite with Floyd and Austin. The AEW Match Guide Podcast, hosted by Sir Sam. And the Great Match Generator, hosted by Danny. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review. And we will catch you next week on Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
That was Jeremy. I'm Josh. Thank you for listening, and Ichiban.
Thank you for listening to Keepin' It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.